obviously interested, like, you know, your life sounds like it revolves around football, right? In terms of obviously watching it, work, etc. How old were you when you first started playing football?
You mean just kicking a ball?
Just kicking a ball around the street.
I've got a picture. I've got it on my phone. So I had big blonde wig, curly hair in the 70s. I was born in 72, and Mum said it was about 76. And I'm in an England strip, stood in the back garden with my blonde wig, tight little shorts, skinny little legs, broad shoulders, weird shape. So a 4-year-old.
4 years old.
And we lived in a street with a school opposite, and the surroundings of the school was just like fences, like metal fences with concrete posts in between. And I used to start at the top of the street, and I think there was about 30 houses in our street. And I just used to work my way down, kicking the ball against the fence, because the neighbours used to come out and shift me on, because I was making too much noise, whacking the ball against the metal fence, thinking I was Kenny Dalglish, Ian Rush, because I was a Liverpool fan and they were my heroes. And just every time a neighbour would come out and say, "Come on, Stephen, move down, you're making too much noise," I'd work my way from the top to the bottom. I'd end up outside my own house, because then my mum and dad didn't whinge about it. But that's all I used to do, was kick the ball against the fence, and then go over on the school field when we got a group of friends. And I had every strip going. Even though I was a Liverpool fan, I would collect every strip. So I'd have Chelsea, I'd have Man United, I'd have Aston Villa, I'd have Ipswich. These are the teams that were in what was the old Division 1, wasn't it? But we're talking like Premier League level, but it was the old Division 1. My mum and dad said all I wanted for football every year was just a strip and a ball and a pair of boots. A strip, ball, pair of boots, or a couple of strips. And I would just have so many. I wish I'd saved them. Oh my God, I wish I'd collected them, and my mum must have threw them out, but not because they'd fit me now, but it would just be good to look back and go, oh my God, I collected this, that. And I remember the old Chelsea shirt, and it must have been about, I don't know, early 80s. So I would have been about 10-year-old, and it was beautiful. It was like all different blues going across the strip. And when I first got it, all the kids in the street were like, "Oh wow, I want that one, I want that one." It was hard to get hold of, and I remember getting an away Man United one for some reason. I think we used to have a competition with the kids in our street who could get what strip, you know, because we'd all have something different. And we'd go on the field and kick about. Nobody wanted to go in goal. And we
Standard.
Just played,
no one ever wants to go in goal.
So we'd have like 6 or 7 of us, so one would go in goal, and then we play 2v2s, 3v3s, or we'd do old World Cup where
World Cup doubles, World Cup singles.
And we used to get chased by the school, the caretaker. He used to come out, and if we kicked it up against the wooden side of the building, I think it was like the sports hall, they had like all wood, and it used to make bang after bang after bang, and he used to come out and chase us. So we used to go and get his son to come out and play. He was a bit older than us, which wasn't fair, because he was about 4 years older. So when you're like 10 and he's 14, or you're 12 and he's 16, he's physically better.
Development is just like massive.
Yes, and he wasn't that great, but he was obviously
physical.
Yeah, but if we could get him out, then we wouldn't get chased by the caretaker, because it was his son.
Tactical move.
So we used to go and get him out. His name was Mark, and we used to go, "Do you want to come and play, Mark?" And he'd come out. He wouldn't go in goal because he's the oldest, so he used to put us in goal. But I remember we even got like, one of us one year got a proper goal, because we used to just do old school jumpers for goalposts.
Standard,
yeah.
Or just like find a bar goal or something like that.
And then we got poles, and then we found it. Then one of us for Christmas got a proper goal, and that was like obviously miniature size, but that was amazing.
Yeah.
Back in the day, I mean, now it's standard for most kids to have a goal in the back garden, because you can just pick them up at anywhere really. But back in the day, it was in early 80s or mid 80s, it was tough.
Yeah. Where did you grow up?
Where did I grow up?
Yeah, where exactly did you grow up?
My hometown, Hartlepool.
Okay.
So I grew up there. I signed youth team forms there, and I played there for 2 years in the youth team, and then got offered a contract, and had 2 years as a professional before I moved to Bournemouth in 92 at the age of 19. So I signed for Hartlepool in 88.
Okay.
Yeah, I played in 4 decades. It's crazy, yeah?
Yeah, it's a huge career.
Because I only had 24 years as a player. I say only, it's still incredible to have 24 years. I mean, I was very fortunate. A lot of injuries, but I had a good longevity. But when I say to people I played over 4 decades, they go, "Well, that's impossible because you played for 24 years. I went, "It's not, because I started in the late 80s and finished in 2013. So I played in the 80s, 90s, noughties and the 10s. Yeah. So I spanned over 4 decades, although it was the back end of the 80s when I started. So yeah, I've seen a lot of things change, like you wouldn't believe, not just in teams, but the infrastructure, football clubs, brought in from analysis and the medical side of things. I mean, it was just, when I speak to even my children or my children's boyfriends, because my daughters are a bit older now, they're 25 and 22, and I speak to their boyfriends or younger generation, what we had back in the day and how we started, they look at you disillusioned, like you're from outer space. Like they just can't believe them things went on. And I'm thinking that was late 80s. Imagine what it was like in the 70s and the 60s. And that's why I'm so intrigued when I hear stories and I meet older professionals, especially that play at the top level. And I'm just mesmerised by the stories because you can relate to them a little bit. But some of the things they had to endure and what they went through and how they became a professional and what they had at their disposal was nothing really.
Minimal. Yeah.
Beyond minimal. It was almost jumpers for goalposts, even in the top flight of. And my granddad played football as well. My granddad was a professional. I played for England, won the FA Cup with Derby County in 1946, the only time they've ever won it. And then he captained them the year later, so we have the FA Cup winners medal at home, got his England caps. He played top flight for, like say, Derby for a few years, Huddersfield. Unfortunately, the World War II, broke up his career, and he played a few of the England games in friendlies during the war against Italy, out in Turin, Scotland, Northern Ireland. There was a couple of others. So fantastic career, something at the heights I never reached as myself. But yeah, he was. So some of the stories I hear about him, unfortunately, he died when I was just before I turned professional. So that was one of the biggest heartaches in my life, that he never saw me turn professional. But I remember him telling me the stories, and other people telling me stories about my granddad and what he went through. And I've got a lot of the memorabilia. Some of the things used to get sent in the post from England, and just a little letter. It was like a little booklet, 2 or 3 pages, where you've got to be, what time the coach is picking you up, what you got to wear, what you got to bring along, where you'll go afterwards to the hotel to have what they call the dinner dance afterwards and a celebration. I mean, I've got all these at home, and they're priceless because it's from England. They're all like pristine.
That's unreal.
Incredible. Some of the programmes from the 1946 FA Cup final, pristine in a plastic self-contained wrapper where it hasn't even been touched. All the signatures from every player who played in that final, the Derby County players and the Charlton players, every single player. I've got so much memorabilia because his wife, my nana, it's my mum's side of the family, he was called Jack Howe. My nana lived till she was 96, so with my granddad passing away in 87 when I was 15, my nana lived like another 20, 25 years. She used to tell me all the stories, and as I got older and understood more, it became more interesting for me. And then she'd pass down the memorabilia. She'd go up in the loft and come down with all these other things, England shirts, caps, all the programmes, all the cut-ins. These little, like I say, these little booklets used to get sent before you went to, even one before the FA Cup final, where you were going, what you would be doing, which hotel you'd be staying in. You've got to bring your own boots, your own shin pads, your own wash bag. They're telling you strategically what you have to bring. You have to bring your own slips. You have to bring your own towel. It was like, I've got it. It's incredible to look at.
Nuts.
And I show people and they go, that can't be real. I said, look at it. I said, it is the original.
Yeah. No, that's unbelievable. Obviously, with that in mind, you mentioned your granddad, like his passing was like a really, traumatic experience for yourself. Beforehand, was he a big influence in you playing football?
Yeah, and I say that in every interview, every article I've ever written or been part of, because my dad wasn't really a football person, but he used to follow me and they'd take me everywhere. So my parents were incredible, like most parents are these days, and they just almost sacrifice their own life to take you to wherever you got to play and come and watch you in the horrible conditions. And they sacrificed a lot, and my parents did, both my mum and my dad. But obviously, because my dad wasn't a footballer and he wasn't really technically very good at football, he was more into his cars and he liked more of the motor scene. I mean, he still loves F1 to this day. He sits down and he knows everything about F1. I mean, everything. Incredible.
Still don't get F1.
No, I'm not, and I never did.
Yeah.
And for me, it's just meow, meow, meow. I'm like, Dad, you can't even say. He's been to Silverstone. I've bought him presents for Christmas, his birthday, to take him to these places, and he still loves his football. And I think only because of me, because it's my mum's side. It was my mum's dad who played for England, Jack Howe, and he used to take me in the garden, and when my friends were out hanging on street corners of Hartlepool and doing things I shouldn't be doing, I was practicing my 1-touch, 2-touch, chest, half volleys, left foot, right foot, and it just gave me the basics and the basis to go on and use them in my future career. Because I always say to kids these days, if there's any advice, don't ever stop kicking the ball up against the wall, practicing your 1-touch, 2-touch, chest, knee, control. Because a lot of academies, I think now, they don't do sometimes the basics enough. And there's nothing wrong with, even at our level now in the Premier League, when the lads go out to warm up and you're just passing the ball between you 1 and 2 touch, wrapping it in, because it's just repetition. It's just familiarity, and it's a habit.
It's the foundation.
Yeah, it is. It's 100% the foundation, and of course you need other things in the game, but if you can get the basics right at the age of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old, and you continue just wrapping balls in, touch, left foot, right foot, taking it with the outside of your foot, taking it with the inside. I remember doing all this with my granddad in the back garden, and then when he passed, my dad did used to take me out. The only problem was my dad wasn't technically very good, so he would just stand with me while I did it all.
Can you remember playing in the garden with your granddad?
Yeah, going in the back garden, especially in his house, and on a Sunday afternoon we'd go around my nana's and granddad's for roast dinner, because my parents owned a pub. My granddad owned a pub, and then he passed it down to my mum and dad, become steward and stewardess of a workman's pub. And at the age of 3, I think, my parents took it over, 3 or 4 year old, so they had it for many, many years. And they were still in the pub trade until my dad turned 70, so I think I was 39. So, we've been in that business ever since I can remember.
Yeah.
In the eye to a grasshopper. It's a brutal environment, hard work, long hours. I don't think I'd want to do that.
Fair bit of football on.
Yeah, football on every Saturday, every Sunday. But my granddad, I remember almost as clear as day when I was younger, going in the back garden and him just throwing the ball up to me, and I had to control it with my chest and half volley it back to him on the ground. And it's just learning them basic techniques, like you say, the foundations, and that put me in good stead. I mean, there's a lot of other things that have to come into play, of course. That's just learning the skills and the basic side of football. But if it wasn't for my granddad, I probably wouldn't have had any. Maybe I'd say probably. Maybe I might not have had the interest that I did have from a young age, but
sparked it.
It was a kid. I was just obsessed. And
yeah.
Liverpool were my team through the 80s, and they won everything. So I remember, I think the first FA Cup final I watched was 79. It was Man United v Arsenal, 3-2 Arsenal, scored in the last minute. And I remember watching it. And the next year was 1980, and it was I think Arsenal again, Trevor Brooking header. And then I was obsessed with the FA Cup, and then I was a Liverpool fan. And then 82 was Tottenham, and it just went on like that. And the FA Cup was as big for me as the league.
Really?
And Liverpool got in the FA Cup a few times in the 80s. Remember 86. I think they were in 87. They might have got beat. No, 88 they got beat. I think by Wimbledon. 87 might have been Coventry, Tottenham. But yeah, I'd get a flag, a Liverpool flag, and start waving it in the front room. And
love it. That's something you would do, bro.
Unbelievable. And then when they scored, I'd run out in the street and blast the ball against the fence and pretending whoever had scored the goal. So in 80, I think it was 86, Ian Rush scored 2 goals. I think they beat Everton 3-1. And I'd run out and Ian Rush, and I'd kick the ball against the fence and start waving my flag around, then run back in the room and watch the front room, because like I say, it was only 10 yards from my house to the school. So
did you pretend to be footballers when you were practicing on your own much?
Yeah. That was me. I was just by myself in the street.
I used
I'd
to
run
do
out
this,
and kick the ball.
100%. I used to do the same, but like I'm wondering how much that helped with like the visualization element. Like, do you think like that was like visualizing it to a certain degree at that age?
Now looking back, you did, but probably at the time everyone just thought I was a lunatic.
Yeah.
You just shut up, shouting Dalglish and Rush. Is there any other players in the Liverpool team? Because it was we had a pavement, then a road, just a normal road, and then a pavement, and then the school fence. So where the road is, you've got a curb, haven't you? You know, you play Kirby
Standard.
with the ball, yeah? So we used to play Kirby a lot as well. And I think any ball game's good for eye-to-ball contact. So even just throwing things, you become good. When you're a footballer, you're good with your feet, you'll find most footballers are good at table tennis. They'll pick up normal tennis, badminton, anything with eye-to-ball contact they're very good with. So playing Kirby, anything, basketball. All right, they're not going to be top level, but they're going to be at a good standard where you think, oh, because they've got balance, they've got a visualization of, like I say, eye-to-ball contact. And I used to kick the ball up against the curb, so then it would flick back up in the air and then just volley it against the fence and then just run back in the house and get me flag back out and then start singing Liverpool songs. I mean, parents must have thought, our son is nutty.
I rate it. Obviously, with that in mind, you know, you are playing football at that. You mentioned you got signed by Hartlepool. Obviously, beforehand, where were you playing and like what sort of level were you playing at?
Just school level. The thing with me is I was always big as a kid, right? Until the age of about, when do you go to, I call it big school, when do you go to senior school?
At
It's different now. You have years now, don't you? You have year 1 all the way through. We had junior school and then senior school, and senior school was seniors 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you left. So maybe 11, 12 maybe, went to senior school. I was always the biggest until I got to senior school. Then I had a growth stint. Well, not a growth stint. I had a stint in growth where
I've had one of them.
I didn't.
You've always had one, mate.
and everyone caught me up.
Yeah.
So I was miles bigger than everyone at junior school. I was the best player in the school, best player in the town. And then everybody caught me up, and some of them surpassed me. And then I got swallowed up a little bit from the age of maybe 12 to 15. And then at 15, I started to grow again and filled out. And I was always a winger. I was always quick, rapid winger. And then I remember going for trials in the local town, Hartlepool. So we'd have like trials, and you represent your school. And they put me as a striker. And I remember almost being in tears. I think I was probably 14.
Omri style.
More like, no, more like Tony Cascarino. But I was still like, because I'd had a bit of a growth spurt, they went, oh, you can go up front. And I was like, oh no, I play on the wing. And they went, but can you just go up front because we've got too many wingers? And I was nearly in tears. I went to my parents, I don't want to play up front, I don't want to play up. And I went and scored a header and scored another goal, and that was it, mate. I was up front forever then. And that was the age of 15. I played up front for the town. So when we played for Hartlepool, we'd play teams like Newcastle, Sunderland, Middlesbrough, Darlington, because they're the northeastern teams. Maybe you'd go down as far as like Leeds and Bradford, but we'd always get thumped. That was the problem, because with it being a small town of like 90,000 people, when you play the likes of Middlesbrough, Newcastle, Sunderland, Leeds, they've just got, everyone just seemed twice the size.
Physical stature's massive at
That's
that
like
age as
playing
well.
teams from London. When Bournemouth play teams from London here in the academy, they're always bigger and stronger and faster and I remember then I was like, oh my God, I've got no chance of being a footballer, because I'm just looking at these lads at 15, 16. Although I was a good player in my town and I was starting to fill out and find my path, when you come up against some of the players at Newcastle or Sunderland, you'd be like, well, they're just way too good. And then when I got on the youth team at Hartlepool, I went for a trial at my local club, and there was like 120 kids. I mean, it's nothing like this these days, but back in the day, there was a couple of places up for grabs for the youth team. So they'd have a big trial and people would come from all over, and I got through the first trial. I think it was 4 games going on, down to 2 games, down to 1 game, and I got through 3 games. And then in that 1 game that they were going to pick 2 youth team players from to join the other 8 or 10, 8 as first year youth team. I think there was 10 available. There was 8 already chosen. They were going to choose 2 more from the game. I went and scored a hat-trick. And you see, say fate, I could have not scored that day. I could have had a horrible game at the age of, 16, and nothing might have materialised. And I'd have went to college because I wanted to be a PE teacher, so I had my place ready at college then to go to uni, and if nothing happened with the football. And I went on this trial, like say, over a 3 or 4 day period, played 3 games, and the final game got a hat-trick, and then literally a day later got offered a youth team spot.
Do you believe in fate?
I didn't. I do now. I think you can help create your own fate as well from a positive mental side of things. I think you can visualise things, and I think you can make things happen more than I did believe when I was younger anyway. I do now. So I think it's a bit of both. I think, yeah, fate can happen, sporadically, but I think you can almost help to create it as well to some degree.
In terms of the positive mindset, how important is that in modern day football compared to what it was like sort of in your time when you were playing?
It's huge.
How big was it
Massive.
for your career as well?
Yeah, but nobody was there to give you it really, apart from your parents. It was brutal back in the day, absolutely brutal, which I'll go on to in a bit. But yeah, I got through that trial and then got offered, and then 2 years in the youth team.
How'd you get on in the youth team?
No, I was injured all the time, and I was very fortunate. Once again, this is fate, I suppose, and a bit of luck. I was a first team. Obviously, in the youth team, you have first years and second years. So we had about 10 second years. I think we had, like I said, 10 first years, of which I was one. At the end of your second year, they either take you on or they don't. And it was called a YTS scheme back in the day, a youth training scheme. We trained at Hartlepool, and we were around the first team boys, but we never really got involved. And I was in the intermediate league, and we would play all the teams around the northeast. Once again, we wouldn't really do that great because you're playing against Newcastle, Sunderland, Leeds, etc., etc. And there's some big teams and some quality players in that team, in those teams. And I remember in my second year, I got a bad injury in my knee, and I was out for a long period, and I came back and it kept niggling me. And then our manager at the time of Hartlepool, which was not the youth team, but the actual manager, was a legend from Newcastle called Bob Moncur. He got sacked, and then we got a new manager in called Cyril Knowles, and he played for Tottenham. There's a song about him, nice one, Cyril, nice one, son. And I didn't know at the time about his history of what he did as a player, but I knew he played for Tottenham, but I didn't realise he was such a big legend. But he came in, and although back in the day the manager doesn't really get involved much with the youth team, I mean they do a lot more now, but back in the day they didn't. But he came to one game, and I was playing. I was in my second year, obviously, in the youth team, and it was round about March time, I think. And you're thinking, right, this is the time in the next couple of months I'm going to find out whether I get took on or I don't get took on. And if you do, you got a chance, and if you don't, see you later.
Where was your head at in that moment?
Well, I'd been out injured for a while, and I was thinking I've just got to impress. And he came to the game, and everyone was like, "Oh, Cyril Knowles is at the game. Cyril Knowles is at the game." And you think, oh, I've got to play really well. And about half an hour in, I was playing really well, and I was up front, and I don't know what the score was. I don't even know who we were playing, but I was doing really well. And I thought, yeah, I'm paranoid, but we're all impressing him, or trying to impress him. And then I got a whack on my knee, and I had to come off. And from then till the end of the season, I only played sporadic games because I'd come back from injury. And I remember playing on the pitch against some team, I don't know, from the northeast, right at the end. And I thought, well, I've played half an hour in front of him and I've done well. I've got to really do well again. I scored a goal and I did okay. And right at the end of the season, you go in and you sit in his office. Well, usually you don't really see the manager much. You might see him around the place a little bit, but he doesn't really have any one-to-one contact. So we all went in one after another, sat in his office.
Can you remember the moment, like walking up the corridor?
Well, we had porta cabins.
Oh, okay.
Because the stand had come down at Hartlepool, and we had porta cabins because we couldn't afford to build a new stand. So we're all in porta cabins. I walked out the porta cabin, and we all were just sat in there in the room, all the 10 lads, and they'd come in and go, yeah, I got a contract. I know I didn't.
What's the atmosphere like in that moment?
It's horrendous because your whole life is probably dependent on, or felt like it at the time. I know you can go to other clubs now, but back in the day, I can't remember one lad out of the 10 who went to another club and started his career. It was just like, finish, see you later, off you go. So we knew there was only 2 places that he was going to take on as a pro.
It sounds like a difficult position to be in.
Horrendous.
With 10 lads.
And I'm looking at the lads around the changing room, and I'm thinking most of them are as good as me, if not better.
And they're your pals as well, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because you've been with them for 2 years in the youth team, and they've come from all over the place. I mean, we had a couple of lads from Newcastle area, Sunderland area, Middlesbrough area. They come from all over. They don't just come from Hartlepool. I think I was the only lad who was actually from Hartlepool himself. The rest were from all different areas of the northeast. They all lived in digs, even as a youth team player, because not many of us drove at 16, 17-year-old. Or you can't at 16, but I mean 17. Not a lot of the lads had cars, so they'd have to stay in digs down. So you're sacrificing your whole 2 years of your life away from your family just to be told yes or no. And the manager got me in and sat down with Cyril Knowles, and he went, I'm going to take a chance on you, big man. I like big players. And because I was 6'2", quite obviously not like I am now, but I had some structure to me. And I was just very fortunate. He wanted a big player. If he'd wanted a tricky little winger, I wouldn't have got a contract. And he said, I like big players. I want a physical team, and I'm going to take a chance on you. I've seen you in a couple of games, seen you in the one you got injured, and you will do for me. And it was literally a conversation of 10 minutes like that. And I walked out, the happiest lad in Hartlepool, going in there thinking I was just not going to get a contract because he hadn't seen enough of me. I'd been injured. He'd saw me for half an hour, did okay, but he's going to think, nah, I haven't seen enough of him. And he just said, I'm going to take a chance on you.
It's incredible how important that timing is. The perfect manager who suits your style of play.
Because it could have been a manager who come in and just wanted a totally opposite type of player to what I was. And I was one of them, and there's only one other lad. We had a wide player, a lad called Lee Todd, I remember him, and the 2 of us got took on and the other 8 got released, and that was it. See you later, pack your bags and off you go.
Brutal.
And then you're like thinking, okay, now what? Now I'm going to be training with the first team, so you've got like 6 weeks in the off season before you come back. And I came back with the first team boys, and these are the, after the youth team game on a Saturday, you're rushing back to watch your players like they do here, and you watch them in the first team games. And now I'm training with these lads.
And how's your knee?
Oh my God. That was all right. I mean, it's the one I've had problems with all my career, and ended up having 11 operations on. And I look back and, it's probably the start of my bad time with my knee. But I remember going into pre-season, so that would have been 1989, and it was just crazy because now I'm training with these players who I'm idolising, watching as a kid growing up, and then being around in the youth team thinking, I could never join in training with that. It's too much ability for me in that team, and I won't be able to get anywhere near what the levels they're at. And then all of a sudden I'm training with them,
How receptive were they for youth team players to come play?
Brilliant. And I look back now, and we actually, the first year I was a professional, we got promoted for only the second time in Hartlepool's history into what is now League One. Well, it was the old Division 4 into the Division 3. And I only started about 6 games, but I was sub about 30, and I got on maybe another 10 or 12 of those games. So I had a little bit part. I scored a couple of goals. And I just remember the lads being brilliant around me. Of course, it was a brutal changing room, and if you didn't adhere to what it was, imagine back in the late 80s, there was a culture, and you had to adhere to it, you had to be part of it.
What is that culture?
Win or lose, you're on the booze. It was, it's a bit like that. And it was brutal in the changing room, and if you never stood up for yourself, and you would just get swallowed up. You just said it as it was. And I remember a few of the players having a go at me when I was younger because I was a big lad, and they wanted me to toughen up a little bit more. And I remember a striker who was very similar to me, a lad called Paul Baker, who I'm still in touch with now on social media. And I've been to a lot of the reunions because obviously we got promoted, and we've had our 20th anniversary. And I always say to him, and I do in my speeches, that you took me under your wing and you showed me, because I was a similar type of striker, you showed me how to hold the ball up better, be stronger, be more physical, not care about things when it goes wrong. And he was like almost a bit of a mentor for me in the first couple of years.
How important was that for your development?
Huge, because when you're not playing regularly, and then you're coming off the bench, and you're not that type of player you want to be, and you're not developed properly, you need someone to believe in you. And although Cyril Knowles believed in me, I remember when we used to be training, obviously I was physically quite strong, so we'd be in the gym, and I say gym, we'd be in the porta cabins with free weights just laid around, and it was old school jumping on the spot by lifting the weights above your head and pumping out dumbbells. And it was just,
getting the cars in.
Oh mate, basic as you could think it was. You'd go on any social media platform now and just type in 80s training, and you'd see all these people running around doing crazy things. But I remember him stood over me, and I remember this, and it's one memory I have of Cyril Knowles. So in pre-season, I'd have this big 10 kilogram weight or 15 kilogram, and it was old school, made of metal. It was rusting and everything because we had no money for equipment. And I was doing sit-ups, and we had to push as we did the sit, we had to push the 10 kilogram or 15 kilogram weight onto his hands. He had to reach it, otherwise it didn't count. Well, I was quite strong and I was good. And I remember standing over me going, "Come on, son, you could fight Tyson, this bloke." Give me because Mike Tyson was huge at the time. And he's going, "Come on, you can fight Tyson, son." And I was like, it just gave me a motivation. I was like, yes. And I kept doing it. And I battered everybody in pre-season, physically. And I know I couldn't do that later in my years, but I was incredibly fit. I was right at the front of all the running. And because I wanted to not let him down, he'd given me this one chance in football, Cyril Knowles. And because he believed in me, and just something as bizarre and as stupid as that, standing over me going, "Come on, Fletch, you could fight Tyson, my son." And it just gave me he believes in me, and I didn't want to let him down. I'm that type of person. I don't like letting people down. And like I said, I didn't play much the first year. Second year, I started getting the team a little bit more, but unfortunately, Cyril Knowles, he passed away. He had a brain tumour halfway through that season, and a new manager came in and took over, a lad called Alan Murray.
Fucking hell, what does that do to the club? Because
absolutely, I was distraught. I was in bits because he was the one who gave me a chance in football, and then Alan Murray come in. Didn't have a massive footballing background. I think he was chief exec or something for a while, or head of accounts, but he'd done some coaching, and I think it was a cheap option for Hartlepool. I've spoken to Alan about it since, and he was the one who let me go to Bournemouth. He was the one who was prepared to sell me to Tony Pulis, who bought me in 92. So I had 6 months with Alan Murray. He took over the team that Cyril Knowles had. So we got promoted that year with Cyril Knowles.
And how old are you at this point?
18.
18.
We got promoted that first year as a professional with Cyril Knowles. Like I say, I only played maybe 5 or 6 games. I started and come off the bench a dozen times, but I was involved in the majority of the 46 games. I remember playing Tottenham in the Cup. We got Tottenham in the League Cup, and I got injured the week before. I was devastated, and we played at White Hart Lane. Gaza was playing, Gary Lineker, Mabbott. Gaza scored 4 that day. We played away. I went to the game.
Did you
I went down with the teams. Gaza scored 4, Lineker scored 1. We got beat 5-0, and we drew 1-1 at home. But they brought a second string out, and I still was injured for the second. So I didn't even get a chance to play 1 minute. And I remember being absolutely devastated because when you're a lad playing for Hartlepool, it was League 4, to play someone like Tottenham. I think it's never going to happen ever again in your life, and it didn't really for me. Not a lot anyway. Maybe once or twice, but I went into my second year and I really was determined to do really well. And like I say, the manager passed away, unfortunately, Cyril Knowles, God rest his soul. And Alan come in and he didn't really fancy me as much. I played a little bit here and there. And then towards the end of the season, I played a lot more. And ironically, the last game of the season, so this is in my second year as a pro, I'd sort of established myself a little bit towards the end of the season. We played Bournemouth and Harry Redknapp was manager. Tony Pulis was assistant. Harry had already signed a contract at West Ham. He knew he was going to West Ham to be Billy Bond's assistant, and Tony Pulis was going to take over the following season. And we played them the last game of the season. Bournemouth needed to beat us to get in the playoffs, and we just wanted to finish the season on high. I think we finished quite high, actually. I think we finished about 7th or 8th, or just outside the playoffs. But we couldn't get in the playoffs, Hartlepool. We beat them 1-0. I didn't score, but I set the goal up, and I played against, ended up being our manager, Kevin Bond and Paul Morrell, two legends at the time of this football club. And I had a really good game against them and bullied them a little bit. And I think Tony Pulis, well, he likes big, strong strikers and players, doesn't he? He looks throughout his teams throughout his career, and he just thought, I fancy a bit of that. And halfway through the next pre-season, I got a call to come into Alan Murray's office, the manager of Hartlepool. He said, Tony Pulis wants you to go to Bournemouth, and he's offered a good amount, 30,000 with another 20,000 after a certain amount of games. He said, I'm prepared to let you go and have a talk with him. He said, a lot of the board members don't want you to go. He said, but they've let the final decision rest with me. He said, if you go down to Bournemouth and you don't fancy it, you can come back and you can fight for your place here. But he said, just to let you know, we're going to be ringing a couple of other strikers in, etc. So I was 19 now at the time. And I was like, well, okay, you're sort of telling me that I'm not really in your plans. But anyway, I'll go down to Bournemouth. But I didn't really know where Bournemouth was. So I got the old British Isles book out, because there was no sat navs then. There was no mobiles, by the way.
Old school.
There was no mobiles.
Yeah, it's nuts.
So it was in 1992. It was July the 22nd. Drove down to Bournemouth with my dad, following the map on the British Isles big book. It took us about 6-7 hours. And I had to stop off on the way to a phone box in the services because I couldn't phone Tony Pulis on a mobile. Because there was no mobile.
Yeah.
He had to guide us in to Bournemouth and where to go. And we stayed at the Royal Bath Hotel, which was probably the best hotel in town at the time. I remember driving in down the West Cliff, and it was just like, wow, the sun was scorching hot. It was, I don't know, about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I was like, oh wow, this is a different world to Hartlepool. This is like going abroad. And when you go away as a kid, when I was little, and you're like, wow, look at this, and seeing all the sea, and then you see like the promenade and the pier and the Royal Bath, and staying in the Royal Bath, and I was like, well, I was done straight away. I remember looking at my dad and
sold.
Yeah, I was thinking that I'm not coming back, regardless of what contract. And then I met Tony the following night. The following day. So we spent the night there, and me and my dad, and we met Tony the next day. Took us to the training ground, the stadium. Offered us a contract. I think it was on £180 a week at Hartlepool, and Tony offered me like 300. So it wasn't about the money, and a little signing on fee for coming down, and I think it was just more the fact that I've moved away. I've got a manager here who really wants me, and just signed the next day, the 23rd of July 1992. The crazy thing was, I went back with my dad the following day. So we drove down. Dad drove us back. So that was the Wednesday, I think, something like that. Tony said, well, I need you in training, because I had to go back and get some gear. I was going to stay in digs. Sorted out. Our kit man at the time, God rest his soul, Nimbus, legend here. Ken Sullivan was his name. His nickname was Nimbus. A lot of the players stayed with him. Even Jermaine Defoe stayed with him when he came down here in 2000. He said, oh, you're going to stay with Nimbus, Ken Sullivan? I said, okay, fine. He said, but go back, get your gear and come back. He said, I need you back here on Friday because we're playing Aston Villa in a friendly on the Saturday. So I was like, okay. So went back with my dad. Now I have to drive back down by myself. And I'm like, oh my God, I never really drove out of the northeast of England, really. I think the most I ever went was to Alton Towers, which was like Nottinghamshire or Derbyshire, and that was like 2.5 hours away. So I had to once again get the big map book out and written it all on a big A4 bit of paper. Everywhere I got to go, right, I got to go on the M18, then the M1, then I got to go across the A43 onto the A34. I was like, mate, it was just like that on a bit of paper.
Yes,
How do you not get lost? I mean, like,
it's actually
I'm
like,
just looking for the signs as I'm going down in my Ford Escort. You know what I mean? It's like
it's actually insane if you actually think about it.
It's not even a car that's designed for the motorway, because I was only young. I didn't really have enough money to buy a half decent car, and I came down, got here Thursday night. So I'd gone back Wednesday night with my dad. I think we went down I'll tell you what it was. We went down Tuesday, went back Wednesday. I came back down Thursday night, trained Friday, played the game Saturday,
How did you get on in the Friday training with the new set of lads?
It was awful because it's nothing worse at the time than coming into a changing room and you don't know anyone. And I felt it very, very tough, very lonely because you didn't know anyone. But luckily, I buddied up with a lot of young lads at the time. Scott Mean became my best friend, Dave Morris, who's still my best friend to this day, Neil Masters, who went on to play for Wolves, and Keith Rowland, who ended up going to West Ham. So a lot of these players were very similar age, and they're in their first or second year as a profession, a bit like myself. So, but that first day was tough. I didn't like it. I was in digs. It was no mobiles. I had to ask the landlady if I could phone my parents on an evening, which you get one call. So if you're having a tough day or a tough time, and it was very, very lonely, I think. First few months were anyway. Played the game on the Saturday, played against Aston Villa, scored, drew 1-1, and I wanted to go back and see my family. So I drove back Saturday night, got back about 10 o'clock at night after the game, and I came back Sunday night. And it's 340 miles. So I'd gone Tuesday down with my dad, back Wednesday, drove back down Thursday, drove back up Saturday, had to drive back down Sunday night.
Yes,
Monday
nuts.
morning, I'd done like 40,000 miles in like 5, mate. It was incredible. I was never, how I did it. It was only because I was young I did it. Otherwise, it was draining on me. And then I was staying down. I brought most of my gear down with me on the Sunday night, ready for training Monday, and I moved in the digs. And I was like, right, this is me for a period now. And I think it was a good 3 or 4 weeks before I even got an opportunity to go back and see my parents.
Where was your mindset at that point? New club, first game, scored a goal. What did you want to do, and what did you want to accomplish?
I just wanted to be loved. I just wanted to play, because at Hartlepool, I'd established myself a little bit towards the end, but knowing the manager at Hartlepool didn't really have you in his plans. It was lovely that Tony did, but then I had to prove myself all over again. So I just wanted to get off to a good start. I didn't think about anything about moving on or achieving things personally that could put me to a higher level. I didn't think anything like that. I just wanted to play regularly and just enjoy my football, and make new friends. And it was tough, and the goals didn't come easy to start with. I got another bad knee injury about 3 months into that season. I was out for about 4 or 5 weeks. I came back way too early. I was playing with Effa Cuckoo up top, who ended up getting an unbelievable move to Norwich, playing in the top flight. And the first year, I think I only got 5 goals after scoring in the second game of the season as well, at home, the first home game at home to Port Vale. I scored the winning goal. We won 2-1, and yeah, it was tough from a great start to having the injury and then coming back, and I was never the same, and getting a lot of stick off the fans because they'd had a striker here who came back as manager in just after I left in 2007, which was Jimmy Quinn. He was a prolific striker here, and I think they thought I'd come in to replace him, and I wasn't established as a player at Hartlepool, and I was one for the future more than anything. And I think the fans, when the goals weren't coming and performances weren't what they wanted, the stick was brutal. I mean, I had fans telling me to, piss off back up north, useless.
What does that do to your confidence?
I won't even see the words they were using, but you can imagine, think of the world, one of the worst words you can use in the English language. And they were calling me that in the state. Not all of them, and I was very Marmite. They either love me or hate me, and I had fans coming up to me going, "Don't worry about it, Fletch. We love you, and I'll tell you a little story in a sec." And I had other fans booing me saying, "Can't do this, can't do that, useless, donkey, can't move, can't do this." And I was like, well, the more you keep doing that, looking back now, I can think the more you kept doing that, the more it was making me more nervous, to a point where I didn't even want to play on the Saturday. I was thinking so many negative things. If it goes wrong, if I miss an easy chance, if I miss a goal, they're going to be on my case. We call them the boo boys, don't we? And in a stand, because obviously the stadium's different now, but in the old Dean Court, you could hear every voice when you run alongside. I mean, the barriers were literally 1 yard, 2 yards away from the touchline, and you could hear everyone pointing at you and shouting at you and calling you useless. And I mean, now they would get banned from stadiums, literally banned from stadiums. The things that were said to me was absolutely horrendous. But I had a lot of fans sticking up for me as well. And we went to a fans forum one night, and this sort of changed my mentality a little bit. And it was my second year. So the first year hadn't gone great. Only saving grace for me going into the second year was right at the end of the first year, I had a little period where I'd set up a couple of goals, got a couple of goals myself. So I finished the season on a high. So I came into the second year thinking, okay, new start, new beginning. Didn't go well first year. I'd moved into different digs. I had a bit more in Queen's Park, so I had my own environment a little bit. It was quite a big house, a bit more independence. And from then I moved into my agent's house just off Richmond Hill, and he'd given me my own little, like, he converted his garage into like a self-contained flat, and I ended up in there as well, and that gave me my own independence, which helped me a lot to deal with things. And I remember going into that second campaign here at the club on a bit of a high, and we'd had as you do, you have a pre-season, or just before the start of the season, you have a day where you meet the press or you meet the supporters, and I'd gone in with Tony Pulis, Steve Cottrell, we'd signed, a striker who'd been at AFC Wimbledon, part of the crazy gang, and we'd sat there and we were taking questions from the audience, and one lad just stood up and just absolutely took me to the cleaners and said, you can't hit a barn door, useless. And Tony Pulis stood up for me, Steve Cottrell stood up for me, the fans were turning around and slagging him off and saying, we don't want supporters like you, and he was just basically brutal to me. It's almost like he had a vendetta against me, and I was like 20 at the time.
Just a kid.
Yeah, and I was like, oh wow. And after it, because then you mingle with the supporters, and I was always that type of person, maybe getting brought up in the environment I did in a pub life. You're always a social person, good with people. And one bloke, would never knew him now, even if you come in the room with 5 other people to choose him out, to visualise him, I couldn't. And I think my mind was just all over the place. But he came up to me and he said, don't worry, Fletch, don't listen to what he said. He said, all I'd say to you is, work your socks off. We don't care if you don't score goals. He said, work your socks off, run around, show heart and desire, and that's all these supporters want. It sort of stuck with me. And then that year, I sort of thought, well, if I can score goals, I will do what he says. I know it sounds bizarre because you're thinking, well, I'm taking advice here from a supporter. But it stuck with me thinking, well, if that's what the supporters want, if that's what's going to get them off my back, and that's what's going to stop all this heartache and pain and worry and me not wanting to be here or not wanting to play the game because I'm so frightened or worried that things will go wrong and then I get slagged off again, and you haven't got your family here to back you up and have a shoulder to cry, and you've just got yourself. You go back to your digs and you just sit in your room, or you go out with a couple of the teammates.
The relationship between fans and players is a bit of a strange one because they almost forget that you're a human being as well. It's like the passion overrides so much that they're just like, they're not even a human. We can talk to them however we want. Yeah,
they did. And back in the day, nobody, like you say, nowadays you probably get escorted from the stadium. Back then it was horrendous. Like I say to people, you can't imagine what it was like, because I don't really talk about it for a while because it's one of them memories, when you have a bad memory and you don't want to bring it to the fore because you just think, just put it to bed, put it to the back of your head. But I don't mind speak about it now because I've got a total opposite relationship with the supporters. But yeah, I remember that supporter saying it to me, and I just tried my hardest, and I worked my heart out every game, and eventually turned the fans more in my favour. Obviously, there's still not one or two, but obviously a few hundred who I was still that Marmite type of player. But because I worked my socks off, and the next season I won Player of the Season, and we stayed up after the Great Escape in 1994. We had 10 points at Christmas. We were deducted points, and I won Player of the Season. And
come back.
Yeah, it just changed. I started getting a bit more confidence, and I think in any walk of life, in any environment, confidence plays about 80 to 90% of the game. If you're confident, you're playing well. And I was scoring goals. I was almost like the talisman for the team that year. Mel Machin had then took over. Tony Pulis he left after my second season. He got released, and then Mel Machin came in and got younger players in and bonded with them, and just become a bit of a talisman up front. And I played with a lad called Steve Jones up front, and he got a lot of goals. He was supplying me, I was supplying him, and I won Player of the Season. We had first ever Great Escape that year. We only had 10 points at Christmas. 10 points. That's halfway through the season. 10 points. We were like 8 or 9 points adrift of the next team, and we clawed them all the way back, and we stayed up on the last game of the season. And I remember getting supporters Player of the Season. I played centre half for the first 7 or 8 games of that season because we had so many injuries, and then got an injury myself, and then I came back and Boxing Day scored a couple of goals, and that was the turning point for me. And I do say that game against Swansea at home where we won 3-2, I scored 2 goals. I think it was Boxing Day or somewhere round about Christmas. Changed my life here at Bournemouth. because I went back up front after playing centre-half early on the season. The fans were all with us because we had to claw back the points, and that game, scoring 2 goals and getting man of the match, and just changed everything for me here at this football club, off the field and on the field. And like I say, it accumulated with me at the end of the season in the middle of May, getting supporters player of the season on that game, and then we beat Shrewsbury here 3-0 to stay up.
What's it feel like in that moment after the season beforehand to then get in the supporters player? How did you feel like in terms of what you had developed into at that point?
Well, I felt like my whole life had changed. I had a manager who, to start with, probably wasn't sure where I was or what I wanted to be, because he'd come in, Mel Machin, and he'd brought a few players in from other clubs like Steve Robinson, Neil Young, John Bailey, players who played here for a long time after that and become almost a bit of a legend in themselves. Probably looked at me, I was playing centre-half, and I wasn't sure whether he would want me, because obviously I was Tony Pulis' signing. When a new manager comes in, you always think, I'm not sure this new manager's going to want me. But he was the opposite. He'd put his arm around me. He'd hammer me. He was brutal at times, don't get me wrong. He was old school Mel, and we always joke about it now. And Eddie Howe was in the team then, and we always tell the old stories of what Mel was like. And
tell us one of them times you got hammered.
Oh, mate, we played Brighton at home. We got beat 2-0. And when I say the pitch was like a cow's field, it was unbelievable. I mean, you look at it now, and we tried to play half-decent football sometimes, especially under Mel Machin, maybe not so much under Tony Pulis. Maybe that's why the fans didn't like Tony. Just his way of playing, it was long ball up to the big man, and he did that throughout his career, whether he went to Stoke, Bristol, wherever he went, he played that type of football, and it was very effective. But the fans down here liked Mel, the way he played, young lads playing good football. And remember, it was a boggy day, it was obviously winter, and we got beat off Brighton. And I missed a sitter with my left foot. The ball just slopped in the mud, and I swung my left foot and missed from about 8 yards, hit the ball wide. I played poor all game. And in the changing room, Mel would come in and everyone would have their head down, and he sat on the opposite bench to where everybody else did, and you just hope when he looked up, he didn't look in your direction, because if he knew he looked in your direction, you're going to get it, both barrels. And I thought, he's going to come for me. I could smell it. You talk about fate, and earlier on, and thinking about fate, and I'm thinking, that negative side of fate, I'm thinking he's coming for me. You
can feel the energy.
And unfortunately for me, where he sat, I was almost, if you think at 12 o'clock, I was at like 2 o'clock, so I was almost in his eyesight straight away. And he just looked up, so he put his head down, and he'd be thinking, and I'm talking 2 or 3 minutes, was a long time, because then you're thinking, I'm going to get it, someone's going to get it. And he just looked up and he went, fucking you, son. Tell me fucking why, Steve fucking Fletcher. And I was like, oh, here we go. And I just was like, I know. And he was like, you fucking you. And he was going nuts, mate. And I was like, oh my God. And usually in games, because we'd all joke about it, obviously in training, who's going to get it this week? He would go around 2 or 3 individuals, right? And you think, all right, I'll get it for about a minute, and then someone else will get it. I got it for the full 10 minutes, mate. It was brutal, to a point where I was in the showers. We had a big bath and shower area. I was just on the floor, and lads were coming up to me going, don't worry about it. And that was the one time. I got it a few times through the season. He'd go around the whole changing room, so it went around goalkeeper, and it was in like a U shape.
Semicircle.
Yeah, sort of, but squared off. And he'd go around, you played well, rubbish, crap, fucking useless. You did okay, son. What the fuck were you? Mate, he'd go around, and he always had his favourites, Richard Hughes, Eddie Howe. They would never really get it, and if they did, it wasn't like us. And then he'd come to, fucking crap, fucking useless. And I'd be like, oh no. But this time, he really come for me, and he stripped me bare, like, verbally. And like I say, I was in the showers. But the best thing about Mel Machin was, come Monday morning, he'd walk down to training. And back then we didn't really have a training ground. We were training wherever we could. We'd train in schools, over the back of Kings Park, wherever. And he'd put his arm around and go, I love you, son, don't you? I only have a go at you because I want to get the best out of you. And so he'd absolutely destroy you and then make you feel brilliant on the Monday, and then thinking, when it comes to Saturday, you're
getting it again.
But that was Mel, and we have so many stories about him with the players. I mean, obviously, it was always the same players. I mean, he would have arguments with players, and they'd be hid round the corner. I remember he had an argument with a player called Rob Murray at Walsall away, and Walsall's changing room is like in a dog leg, so some of the subs were around the corner and you couldn't see them. Yeah, but you have to walk. It goes left to right. And Mel was arguing with Rob Murray. And he told him he played like a farmer, which was brilliant. You play like a farmer, son. I was like, oh, wow, Rob's getting it right. But the one thing Rob did was he argued back. So I think Mel went to him, Rob, fuck off. And Rob went back, you fuck off. Oh, my God. I was like, what have you done? What have you done? And then it just went, you fucking off, you fuck off, no, you fuck off, you fuck off. And it went on and on and on. I was thinking, well, somebody fuck off because we're going to be here for about 20 minutes. Well, mate, it was funny. Looking back was funny. And me and Eddie now, when we speak, Eddie Howe and Hughesy, and when I meet the players, we always tell stories. And there's one story like that. There's millions. Honestly, some of the things he used to do, he was brilliant. He's a one-off. And there were things that made you into the character you are today. You know, the experiences I have under Tony Pulis the first couple of years and how brutal the supporters were. Of course, I would never have wanted that. And if I had a chance to change it, I would change it. But
would you? But
the other things I wouldn't change because it made a man of me and made me toughen up. So yeah, I would change it. I'm not saying I don't want to get criticised. That's not what I'm saying. I just thought it was a bit brutal.
It's harsh.
Yeah, and I don't want to be pandered, and I don't want a silver spoon in my mouth. I don't want it all easy-ozy because I wouldn't be the person I am today and the character. And I've got a hard exterior, and you know that comes from moments like that. And coming from Hartlepool, you got to be a tough lad to come from Hartlepool, who's a brutal environment. Hartlepool, northeast of England, and then being a publican's son. In growing up in a pub life and being there every day and being around all the lads at Workingman's Pub, you can imagine what it was like. It could be brutal, and everyone was older than you, and they put you in the place. But it gave me my manners, it gave me my respect, it made me the good character that I am today. All those things and all the horrible things that happened with Tony Pulis, and then with Mel Machin, and you know, it gives you a different look on life. I'm not saying that's how you should be these days. It's not, because it's a different world. It is, but for me, it's probably majority of it is what I needed. And then with Mel, like I say, we had our ups and downs, but he'd always love you. And I had a lot of injuries from then until Sean O'Driscoll took over. And I think it was in about, I don't know, we got to Wembley in 98, and then I think 99, Sean O'Driscoll took over. He was our assistant at the time. He'd come up from the youth team. And yeah, I think when Sean O'Driscoll took over, my career took on a different level because he made me captain for a few years. And I think when you're captain, you have a lot of responsibility. So in 2000, I was 28.
How much of a confidence boost is it becoming captain?
Mate, it's just, you feel so much responsibility. And the one thing I learned from being captain is you don't always have to be having a good game to be a leader. So sometimes you can still have a good game even though you're not having the best footballing game of your life. You can organise, you can lead, you can show by example, you can make sure everyone's doing their jobs, you can have a good game by doing the right things and organising and leading by example. And all right, you might be missing a few chances, a few misplaced passes, you might not be winning all my headers, but I could still be a voice, I could still be encouraging. And I mean, yeah, it only takes you so far, but when you're in League One, third tier of English football, a lot of that can take you a long way. And I found that being a captain, that was the one thing I took from it more than anything, was being a leader. You don't always have to have the best game to be a big influence.
How important is discipline and standards whilst you're the leader?
Well, yeah, that changed my life. My wife always says to me now, because I was with my wife probably 3 years before that, she said, but when you become captain and Sean O'Driscoll made you captain, I saw a difference in you, because you do have to lead by example. I can't be the one that's going out organising the lads having a drink. You know, I've got to be sensible. Listen, I'll always be one of them lads, and I always was. And, you know, I did organise things, but I would look at it differently and think, right now, we can't do that. That's not the right thing to do. I'm going to get the backlash. I was the one who was encouraging before. Now I've got to be the one encouraging not to do it.
I want to touch on that, actually, because it's not something that's really spoken about in modern day football. But back then, obviously, there was a bit of a culture around drinking outside of football.
Yeah.
So what was the lifestyle like outside of football for you when you were sort of playing as a professional?
What, when I was younger?
Yeah.
That's what I said. You win or lose, you're out. You just come back on the coach. It was great to be as on the coach. You go out straight away in your club suits or whatever, straight home, get changed out. The only time I wouldn't go out, and I never went out when I shouldn't, was when if you had a midweek game. I wouldn't go out on Saturday night. No, I wouldn't. But if you had Saturday, I would be out. And I'd be out on a midweek as well.
Yeah.
For training, which is poor. And I look back now and I'd change it, but it was the culture.
Isn't that what everyone else did?
Yeah, every team. We go out and see other teams when You know, when you go to London or you'd go to a bigger city, other teams would be out and you see them midweek, and then you come in and you sweat it out in training. And that comes from the 60s, 70s, 80s, all the way through. You can talk about your George Best, you can talk about Tony Adams, you know, and then the next era and the next era, and that's where it comes from the best in the 60s, 70s, and that group of people. And we see it all the time. We hear stories that these old players go and tell you stories how it was.
And they used to like play piss sometimes.
Yeah, come in drinking the night before, and I don't know many players who've done that, but in the 90s, but yeah, they would have in the 80s and 70s, and it was just a culture. It was just a way of life, and you had to buy into it. Otherwise, you were the outcast, and you were frowned upon a little bit if you weren't coming out. You used to get scrutinised by the rest of the teammates. So, and I tell you when it changed, when people like Arsene Wenger come along and people like Gianfranco Zola for Chelsea, and they changed the culture because it was different abroad in Italy and Spain and Germany and France. They had a more professional approach. And remember Sean O'Driscoll putting an article up on the wall that Arsene Wenger had said about players putting alcohol in their body. I mean, I might not get the word in exactly right, but it was something like, is the same as putting diesel in an F1 car.
It's a good analogy.
Yeah, because it was just, it's going to work for a little bit, but it's just going to break down on you. And he put it up, and Sean really bought into it. He did. He was sort of like, for me, the new age manager. The influence of Wenger coming in and a few other foreign managers and bringing foreign players into the Premier League in that late 90s was huge for the way things have developed so quick, because eventually it just takes 1, 2, and before you know it, 10 managers doing it, 20 managers, goes from 1 or 2 players to 20 to 40 to 50 to 100 players all thinking the same, and everybody's like now, and then the money comes into the Premier League, etc., and then you've got to be the best you can be, because if everyone else is, you've got to keep up with the times, otherwise you'll get left behind, and it's a snowball effect, and it happened rapidly.
How difficult was it to merge from the old style of culture to the new style?
Listen, we still went out, don't get me wrong. It wasn't as if we didn't have like Christmas parties. We went out on a Saturday night if we'd won, but it was like, I changed, for an example, I wouldn't go out when we lost because I thought it was bad, it looked bad, unless it was a big event we'd organised and it was like somebody's bet. I wouldn't go out because I didn't want to be seen out with the players. As a player, you meet in the public, all of a sudden mobile phones were there, then there was cameras and there was people chatting, and all of a sudden social media come in, etc. And I just thought it's a wrong way of doing it, and I had to give myself every chance, because I was about 28, 29 then, coming into I was in my prime, and if I wanted any chance of staying in professional football, I had to look after myself. I had a lot of injuries, and I'm not saying I didn't go out and have drinks, of course I did, but I sort of strategically picked the right and wrong times to do it. And when you're seeing everybody else doing that, you're cotton onto it, and you go, I don't think we should go out today, lads. If it doesn't feel right and it doesn't sit right with me, then I'm not going to do it. I'm not saying I didn't on the odd occasion do it and regret it, but it was nothing like before. I mean, before we went out 2 and 3 times a week, Saturday, Monday, Wednesday. Where now it would be like, yeah, I don't mind going out on a Saturday if we've won and we haven't got a game till the next week. But
going out 3 times a week and playing football, it just
mate, I'd change it in a heartbeat if I could.
But it's the culture, right? So it's just what it was at that point. But I just feel like how could you get up in the morning and just hammer out the training?
Because you're young.
I know, but if anything, it's just like it must have been a killer.
Training's nothing like it is now.
Really,
nothing like it is now. No. I mean, not even in the same ballpark. It's like 2 different planets. Honestly, it is.
What's the biggest difference?
Well, you're monitored totally. You got your GPS on every day. There's no hiding place now. Before you could hide in training and think, oh, I was out last night, don't feel great. We're going to do a couple of sessions. I'll just not get involved. I'll keep away. Now it's all monitored because of your heart rate. You can go, right, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. Everyone's looking at you. You come in, you're stinking a drink. You just get sent home from training. You just everything's scrutinised. You with the medical department beforehand, the sports science department before you go out training, doing all your pre warm ups before you even go out and do the normal warm up. The lads are doing all stability work. You'd be found out straight away. We used to just turn up in training, roll out, and then roll back in. And if you can get away with it, and the manager's not seeing you because you're feeling like a bag of shit, you've done well, and you go back and you sleep it off on the afternoon, and then
you're right the following day.
Well, it could be, yeah.
Yeah.
Monday, Wednesday, Saturday. Not every week, but what I'm saying, it was almost like a ritual for many years, Wednesday, Saturday. If you had no midweek game, or if you had a midweek game on a Tuesday, you'd still do Wednesday, Saturday. Would I change it now? In a heartbeat. Everybody would. because it could have been better, but we didn't know any different.
And what you don't know, you don't know.
I don't know any different.
Yeah.
None of what we have now, not even 1/100th of what we've got now was available to us back then. You could say, yeah, the mentality, but if you don't know the mentality and what you should be doing properly, and it's not available to you and you don't even know about it, then you're just going to fall into that trap. It's easy to fall into that trap of, well, I'll just carry on the culture of what everybody else is doing at every other club. And it wasn't just us. It was even Premier League clubs. I mean, how many times, if you look back at stories in the 90s especially, or even further back than that, you'll see top players. I mean, we'll take Euro 96, for instance, with the Gaza and the dentist chair and all that. They were still out, absolutely pissing it up 2 or 3 days before a game. You hear, I've just saw like the Jamie Redknapp and Harry Redknapp thing on the World Cup, and they went and spoke to Terry Butcher, and they were getting like 11 legends of the game, and they were just speaking about how they'd be drinking 2 days before a game and straight after it, and it was just a culture, and you just didn't know any different. It wasn't as if someone come in and said, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. This is what you got to be doing. Everybody else is doing it, and then you go, oh, okay then. It wasn't. It was just like, yeah, carry on, go on, do it. Managers weren't really telling you off. Listen, if you come in hanging like a bag of shit and you were really ill, then yeah, you probably would have got reprimanded. And it wasn't until, like I said, the foreign managers come in, and I remember Sean O'Driscoll being big on it, and he never drank in his life really, and I think that helps when you got a manager who has that mentality, because he said Tony Pulis was probably brought up in that environment a little bit, especially when he was a player. So was Mel Machin from the 60s and 70s, and they sort of like not let it just pass by, but they don't know any different, because that's every other manager was allowing it in their team. So would I change it? 100%, but you can't change something if you don't know what to change it to, and nobody's telling you what to do. 100%. Even though you look back now and you go, well, yeah, I'll be people listen going, well, of course you can change your mentality. You should have done it. You should have thought what's right and what's wrong. But I didn't know what was right, because I thought that was right, because there was nothing to go, oh, there it is, that's right, oh, I should do that. Not one person come to us and said, shouldn't do that anymore, that's bad for you, until, like I say, Sean O'Driscoll put this article up, and then we were just getting wind of foreign players coming in and living their life different, from eating habits to drinking habits to sleeping, and then all of a sudden your sports science start coming in, then your analysts, and all of a sudden it's just gone crazy. And now, I mean, there's no hiding place for anything, is there? I mean, even when you've had a bad game, back in the day, we didn't even video the games. If you did, you got them on DVD, and it was one cameraman at the top just following the ball around. Now you can follow yourself around on the pitch, so it's
crazy. Yeah. Obviously, at that point, you mentioned you're sort of 27, 28 coming into your prime. How much influence does that culture and the development of like sports science and nutrition and everything affect your game?
I think it's brilliant, and it only come into me in my late 30s. I remember Eddie Howe bringing a conditioning coach in when we were doing things. It was a bit funny to start with, because we're like, why is he doing all these exercises? And now thinking back, even though it was only 12 years ago, 13 years ago, how it's evolved since then. I mean, if I'd have done some of the things now, 12 years ago when I was in my late 30s, that the sports science or conditioning coach was doing now, the lads would laugh at it now. So you can imagine how much it moves on year by year. Even 5 years ago, you think the first year we got in the Prem, the things we did on that side of the field with what they're called sports performance now. I don't think they like to be called sports scientists, but sports performance is just moved on. Every year there's something else, something new, and you get wind of another team doing it. So you don't want to be left standing behind. So you're trying to always be going one step ahead of every other team. So it's just incredible. And for me, I was like, yeah, and I think that's what helped me probably play the last few years of my career and play till I was nearly 41, because I did have a conditioning coach who was going to me, Fletcher, I think you should do this to help your knee, help your body, blah, blah, blah. And we only had one person, and he'd come in a couple of times a week, but he did make me think a bit more about it. And like I say, nowadays, players have got everything at their disposal, everything, which is why you see the athletes we've got today, because they are just machines. And I would have loved to just had that opportunity just to see how I could have been with all this at my disposal, because I could have had someone looking after me better, advising me better. I could have had all the, we were just, when I say we were in the weight room, we were just doing basic weights. Now it's all strategic for every part of your muscle, planned around yourself, what your body is, your body type, what you can endure.
Personalised,
yeah,
isn't it?
Is, totally. And I would have loved to just had a couple of years of that and say, go on then, how good could I have been as a physical specimen? Forget outside, but even on the training pitch now, the training's it's ridiculous compared to what it was back then. I mean, tactically and technically. Just had a few years, even if it was just 5 years, and said, right, for 5 years, you're going to have all what you got now. You're going to be coached specifically better for you, because it was just random coaching before. It was just a session just put on, not because it would help me in my career or help me with my head in or help me doing better things. It was just, you just get on with that session and you're part of it, and there was no individual real things you did. There may be a little bit of finishing at the end, but nothing really that you would think, God, that would have made me such a better player, would have me seen the game differently, it would have made me better in my weaknesses. We never worked on our weaknesses, really.
Yeah.
Not really, unless you did it individually by yourself.
It's interesting how much it's developed. So obviously when you are 27, 28, how does that season go at that point with the new management, etc.?
Well, I had probably one of my best seasons under Sean O'Driscoll. What was that, 2000, 2001 was probably, I played up front with Jermaine Defoe, scored a lot of goals, set him up. I was captain, I had responsibility.
Did you get on well with Defoe?
Yeah, I loved him. Just flick it on, he'd beat 3 players and I'd claim an assist.
Make your life easy.
Flick it on at the halfway line, he dings around 3 or 4, chips the keeper from 25 yards, and then I'd put my hand up in the air like, yep.
Yeah, that's all me.
Yeah. That gives you confidence, and I just think it changed. I changed once again. In my career, I had responsibility and I started loving my football, and obviously the fans were on my side a lot more then, so I was loving life. And then I got a bad injury and I was 30, and yeah, it was terrible in 2002. My knee collapsed on me in pre-season, and although I'd had a few operations already on my left knee, they were just like meniscus tears, like cartilage, things like that, clear, which even nowadays they wouldn't even do. So you talk about how everything's changed. I mean, used to get opened up and you'd have keyhole surgery left, right and centre just for a clear out and trims and on your cartilage and blah, blah, blah. I mean, Eddie Howe had to finish his career at 29 and he had operations after operations. We even used to go in together. We standing joke that we'd just be in the room next to each other. And my knee collapsed and couldn't get back. And I was out I came back after about 3 months and played 1 game and then half a game at the next game. My knee collapsed again. And I spent 14 months on the sideline.
What's that do to your mindset?
Yeah, I got told twice I wouldn't play again. I went to see 3 different specialists. They couldn't find it to start with, so I wasted 6 months trying to find the area, and it wasn't until I went to a specialist up in Sheffield, and the person who read the scans, I think he was a Dutch lad, and he said, there it is. And it's what Alan Shearer had, it's what Jamie Redknapp had. It's called a chondral defect. It's like almost a hole in your bone that's created from banging the bones together or what impact. And I'd already had 3 operations before that to try and find it, and they said they couldn't find it, so obviously I wasn't going to a good specialist. And then I got back in the October, they found it, they did what they had to do to it. They said I probably would have another 1 or 2 seasons, and I played for 10, so I'd had to manage it. They said you won't be able to twist and turn, it'll be more straight line running. I took a lot of, well, looking back it was horrendous, but I took a lot of Voltarol, a lot of ibuprofen, things that to mask the pain, otherwise I couldn't have played. A lot of injections in my knee.
I've had friends that have played football at a relatively high level or professional, and they've had to do similar things with ibuprofen just to get through the sessions.
I was on it from 2003 all the way till I finished my career in 2013. 10 years of Voltarol, until specialist said to me, if you keep taking it, Fletcher, it's going to thin all your organs, especially the lining of your heart. You can't keep taking it. But I said, well, I take it on a Thursday and Friday, ready for a Saturday, and a Saturday morning. And if we didn't have a midweek game, I wouldn't start it again till the Thursday. But if we had a midweek game, I'd have to take it the day before, like on a Monday and a Tuesday. So he said, so you're taking it 5 times a week sometimes? I said, yeah.
What did he say?
We just said, I can't believe your heart stood up to it. He said, how the lining of your heart's not thin. That worries me now because, all right, I haven't took any for 10 years, but 9 years since I stopped playing. But yeah, I was popping them like Smarties. But I was speaking to other players who were doing the same thing. I was speaking to a lot of centre halves who'd had a lot of problems, and especially as they got older in the career, and they said, Fletcher, I'm doing the same thing. I popped them 4 or 5 times a week just to keep the swelling down in joints and knees. And for me, it was the only way I could do it, because when I didn't take it and trained, the pain on that area where I had the chondral defect was so intense, I had to stop. And it was masking the pain, but I was limited. So I bulked up in the gym and become a bit more of a target man than I already was, and just thought, right, if I'm going to stay in the game, I've got to be strong in other areas.
Did your teammates know about it at the time? Because obviously you're captain and you want to be a leader, so did you almost want to hide it from them? So they did.
I didn't tell them how much I was taking.
How much were you taking?
Probably 3 or 4 times more than you should have. I mean, the doctors in the end, club doctors were saying, Fletch, you shouldn't really be having these. And I'm saying, but I can't play without them. So I had them. Obviously, and I would probably tell them a few porky pies as well. I'd say, well, give me a strip of like 10 or 12 and then I'll make that last for 2 weeks. Where I wasn't. I was popping them left, right, centre. Yeah, not good. But it's the only way I could play to mask the pain. And say
and it is like, it's understandable, right?
Knee. Yeah, an op 6 in one season on that knee.
It's insane. 6 in one season. Yeah. What, like, obviously I mentioned earlier, like, what's that do to the mindset? But like, does that get you like low mood, or like, is it just like a continuous battle with yourself to get back playing?
Well, it was just a lonely place. The injury was a 6 months rehab. Half the time I was by myself because the physios didn't really know a lot about the rehab. It was big in America, but couldn't afford to take me over to America. But luckily I found a lad who'd been over there who played for Wycombe Wanderers, and he'd been over and seen the top specialist in America, and I got the rehab off him. He played in the same league as us, and I went down to Wycombe Wanderers Football Club and got it off their physio and brought it back and almost did it myself to a degree. Showed our physio and he said, yeah, we'll get on with it, and I got on with it and stuck to the ritual of how to come back from a chondral defect. It's painstaking, boring, by yourself day after day. You lose your mind. You think you're never going to get back. I'd been to a couple of specialists who said I wouldn't come back from it. He said maybe I'd have another season if I did, and then you just think, well, that's it, my career's done. But I was such a strong mindset to go, no, I'm not going to listen to you. So every time I went to see a specialist and he said, don't think there's much we can do. By the time I could do something for it, you'd be 33, 34. So they were talking like 2 years. He said, your career will be over and I'm not even sure you could play with it. And I'll be like, nah, bollocks, I'm not listening to you. I'll go to the next one then. I was so strong minds. I had such a strong mindset and willpower to think, no, my career's not ending. I'm not going to let someone take it away, because I knew I still had it in me. I just had to find a way of managing it, and thankfully I did, like I say, for another 10 years. But I'm not sure I'm going to be later in life, I'll tell you that now, because even when I train outside, some days it's horrendous. I play five-a-side with my friends, and so I keep telling them I'm going to retire, because after I've played five-a-side with them down at a local place like Little Down and places like that, my knee's in bits for about 2 days after, and I've got to come out and help train the boys and things like that. So I might have to retire from five-a-side, I think, so I can just keep myself going as long as I can, because it is really bad. And some days I do have to take painkillers for it still. Sometimes I have to pop the ibuprofen just because there's a little bit of swelling in my knee. I just jar it the wrong way. But I get on with it.
So what sort of player did you actually come back like after the surgery and whatnot?
I just was stronger. I went in the gym and I couldn't really do a lot of twisting and turning because my knee would grind, and I was worried about catching the area when I would turn sharply. So I was more straight line and backwards and forwards, and I'd go back and help defend. And I always used to say I was like box to box, 18 to 18. I'd be like running in straight lines. I was very conscious of going into challenges, tackles, sliding in, because my knee would twist. So I had to protect myself as much as I could.
So you had to almost like adapt and change your game.
100%, yeah. And I went in the gym, become even bigger and stronger. And I thought, well, I'll be more of a target man. And it worked, and worked for many years.
How did it roll out after you coming back from injury? Because obviously the progression of Bournemouth Football Club has been enormous in those 10 years. How did you develop, and how did the club develop simultaneously?
In the respect of,
in terms of obviously just the development of like the whole club as a whole, if that makes sense.
Well, since I've retired?
No, when you were sort of just come back from injury.
Oh, when I come back. So when I come back from injury, which would have been 2003, I was plunged straight in at the deep end. Sean O'Driscoll had took over, and I think he was under pressure because we'd been relegated the season before. While the stadium was getting developed, we played at Dorchester Town Football Club for a few months, and then we came back and that was the season I was out injured for the whole season, and we got relegated. So I was devastated. It's hard. It's even harder when you got to watch from the sidelines, and it's the first time I'd been relegated in my career. And even though I didn't really play, I played one game that season, but it was tough on the boys. And Sean O'Driscoll had been given an ultimatum. I think we had to be in the top 6 after about 10 games or 12 games or something. Otherwise, I think the owner at the time, or the chairman, I think it was Peter Phillips, had given sort of an ultimatum and said, well, otherwise you see you later, Sean. And I think Sean, when I got back playing in the beginning of October, I think it was only training a week, and Sean was like, do you want to be involved away at Lincoln? I was like, I was supposed to be training for a month before, and I was like, straight away, typical me, yeah, go on then. And he put me on with about 10 minutes to go, and it was way ahead of schedule, what I should have been playing, and we won the game, and we got promoted that year through the playoffs. So we played in the playoff final in 2003, so Sean kept his job. We that first game I played Lincoln away, we ended up playing them in the final, and after playing Lincoln, I slowly got myself back in the team. After about 3 or 4 games, I was playing regularly and played all the way at the end of the season, and we finished 3rd, and we got in the playoffs, beat Bury in the semi-final 2003, and then played Lincoln, and I scored the first goal at the Millennium Stadium in a 5-2 victory. It was an incredible moment. I played at Wembley in '98 in the auto windscreen final against Grimsby, so it was a boyhood dream achieved. And then to play in a playoff final at Millennium Stadium was unthinkable. To think my career was being told it was over, it was never going to come back. And then I knew I was struggling, obviously, and I knew what I was doing to make my career carry on. And then to play on the playoff final and score the goal and get back promoted.
What goal did you score?
It was a volley with my right foot.
Nice.
Flicked on by one of our lads, and it's usually me flicking them on. Flicked it on just inside the 18-yard box, and I volleyed it in from about 16 yards, right in the side netting. So, yeah, it was nice to get the first goal. We won 5-2 and back promoted back into League One. So,
what's it like getting promoted?
My career just sort of like started again, because I've been out for 14 months and it just started again. It was like, I felt fresh, even though I was 30 years of age. I felt fresh.
Yeah, like second win.
I was coming
almost.
up 31, second win, and then carried on. I just had yearly contracts after that, because obviously the manager knew about my knee, so I just signed a year after year after year.
And what was it like getting promoted after obviously getting relegated and watching it from the sidelines?
Yeah, it was brilliant, because I'd had a year out and saw the team get relegated, and it was tough. I remember crying away at Wrexham when we got beat. I was doing the commentary. I was doing the core commentary for Radio Solent at the time, every game, and it was terrible, because you can't do anything about it, because I'm not even part of it. I couldn't get on the pitch to help out. I was only in the changing room as a voice, so that was tough. And then to be a massive part of it coming back, and taking the team all the way into the playoffs. I helped take the team, and then scoring the goal, and had a great game at Millennium Stadium. So yeah, it was a fabulous feeling, and we were back where we should be in League One.
Must have been more special though, considering that you got told you would never play again.
Yeah, because you think your career is over, and you think you've only got a few months, and 2 or 3 specialists, like I said, had said to me, Fletch, you probably won't play again. I don't want to break it to you, but yeah, it was heart-wrenching, because you think, what am I going to do? It's all I know, really. I'm not going to go and be a PE teacher, which I was going to do at 18 if I hadn't got my pro contract, back in 1989. So
were you actually thinking, what
I don't know what I was thinking. Yeah. I don't know what I was thinking. I was just thinking, that's probably why I was so strong-willed and strong-minded and single-minded to get back fit, because I'm thinking, I'm not going to do anything else. I don't want to do anything else. There's no way I'm not going to play football.
No plan B, just plan A only.
I'm plan A, and maybe that was the best thing that happened, because if I'd had plan B, would my focus have then come away from plan A, thinking, okay, then this maybe is the path I should go down, where I know it, looking back now, it's crazy to not put something in place or try to start putting things in place, but I was just so focused on plan A, which was, no, I'm not retiring, I'm getting back fit, I will not let this defeat me, I'm going to get back playing, I've got so much more to give, and I wanted to be a professional so much as a kid, I was not going to let it go halfway through my time.
Yeah, I rate it massively. Don't you?
Yeah, so much. I think, like you said, if you don't have a plan B, you just focus so much on plan A, and you have to make it work. You don't actually...
Which is why I took what I had to take, and I took all the painkillers, and I went in the gym and did everything I had to do, because there was no way I was just going to let it go. I knew in the long run it wouldn't be great, which in hindsight people might say, you're crazy, you're stupid, and you took a big risk. Yeah, I did.
But the longevity...
But you live in the moment as well, don't you?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You're not necessarily thinking 20, 30, 40 years down the line.
No, I'm just thinking I'm 30 years of age, and I want to keep playing as long as I can. And then when you keep playing, and you keep playing, and you keep playing, and you're thinking, I'm Peter Pan here, I can just keep going. So even when I did retire at the age of just before I was 41, I went in that room with Eddie Howe thinking I was going to get another year.
That's incredible.
Until Eddie went, Fletcher, I can't give you another year, mate. You're nearly 41. We're in the championship. He didn't tell me to retire, but he's like, I can't give you another contract, Fletcher. And I was like, what am I going to do? And then he said, obviously, I want you as part of the recruitment. I want you to stay. So then, obviously, that's why I retired.
That's incredible longevity though, for a football career, playing all the way until you're 41. I mean,
that's huge.
A lot of players sort of might buy out at 30, but obviously 41, that's amazing.
I just was obsessed with the game.
What was it like though so you've obviously been promoted, and are you about 30, 31 around that time?
Yeah.
How does the rest of your career play out up to the 40s?
Well, from 31 was great because then we got promoted the next year and we done really well. Then around about 2005, 6, team was... That sounds a bit harsh. The team wasn't great. I look at it now and I look back at the team pictures and...
Bit shit.
Yeah, we'd lost some good players because when you're a good team, you lose good players. You know, like a lot of players had gone on to better things, and then you're looking at the team, and then Sean O'Driscoll goes away and becomes Doncaster manager because Doncaster are in the division above, and he's got to go further his career. I think Sean looked at the team and thought it's only going to go downhill from here, and he'd been manager for like 5 or 6 years. And then Kevin Bond came in. We'd had people like Sam Vokes coming through. Kevin Bond came in. I played till the end of the season. I think he came in the October when Sean O'Driscoll left. He was the manager at the end of the season and sat me down and said, Fletch, I'm going to let you go. You're out your contract. Because like I said, that by that time I was only signing yearly contracts because of my knee. That's all the club would offer me. And I was 35 and they sat me down. My ass hadn't touched the seat and Kevin Bond said, I'm going to let you go. And I was like, oh, right. I thought you were going to give me another year.
Oh shit, so it wasn't expected at all?
No, not at all.
Did you have a good relationship with him at that point?
Yeah, I thought it was okay. It wasn't the same as what it was with Sean, but it was okay. He just wanted a different way. He said, look, I got Sam Vokes. I know you want to play. I won't be able to give you much game time. You're 35. He said it happened to me when I was 35. I was at Bournemouth, which he was for a long time. He said, and Harry Redknapp let him go. And he said, I'm going to have to let you go. And I was like, well, you don't? He said, well, I do. And I was like, okay. And I was like, wow, 15 years.
Did you not feel a bit disrespected in that moment?
I went home and said to my wife, she said, everything go all right? I went, no, I've been released. And she went, what? I went, no, I've been released. She said, but you've done quite well this season for him and blah, blah, blah. I said, no, I thought he was just going to offer me a year, maybe a bit of reduced package and wages. Well, not that we always had a wage cap here at the football club. It wasn't very high at all, but maybe you're thinking, all right, you might offer me a year, but maybe a little bit less. 35, that's fine. And just broke down in tears. And then word got around and I went on website. Someone phoned me and said, they've set up a fan page for you on one of the websites. And I went on it and then all the messages started flooding in. I had over 700 and something messages from supporters.
Wow. And
most of them were things I'd done outside of the club for people, from going to visit people in hospital, going around people's houses when they've been ill. There's a lot of stuff I did off my own back, just because that's the type of person I am and being brought up the right way. And it was really emotional. And I phoned my parents up. I said, have you seen this fan page? And they were reading them out. And we were all in tears. And I thought, I'm going to print every single one off. So copy and pasted every one onto loads of papers. And I've got them in a big folder just so I can show my children, grandchildren. Because a lot of them were not football related. They were, it sounds bananas and crazy, but they were like things like, I had a car accident when I was younger and you were my inspiration, come back from your injury for me to get back to full health. I mean, you can't even compare it. It's just ridiculous.
What does that feel like?
It's amazing.
It's amazing. And just in tears. I think I was in tears for about 6 hours. Just kept coming in and one after another. And a lot were obviously football related, but a lot weren't. And there were things like, you came and visited my grandma in hospital when she was dying and you made her last days so memorable, blah, blah, blah. And then you just think, wow, I didn't even think you touched the hearts of people. And they were like, I remember you when you come to my school and you did a speech and I always remember that speech to this day, and I'm now 10 years older and you've been an inspiration. And you're like, you don't realise how much you touch people's hearts and how you can affect the community when you do things.
Such a beautiful
Until
thing.
afterwards it's happened and then people come to you and still do to this day. And
it's a ripple effect, isn't it? Just like you touch one person and that person will then, do something to 2-3 other people, and it just sort of goes on like that.
Well, it's just, yeah, it is. And, you just do them because it's in you to do them. And, I've always been, like say, brought up from my parents to be well respectful of people. And I've never, ever got above my station and thought, I'm this, that and the other. Well, you wouldn't anyway when you play in League One. But I've never turned around to someone and said, no, I won't do that. I'll always do my best to do it. And I still have people coming to me this day, to this day, and go, "God, Fletcher, I remember when you come and visited my nan, and you came to the house, and she never forgets it." And it's like, you do touch people's hearts, and I say football, worldwide football, can have such an effect on life. It's incredible, and I thought I'm going to print them all off, and I've still got them in a folder. And yeah, it meant a lot to me. But 15 years, and you're thinking, what am I going to do?
Because now you're literally forced into plan B.
Yeah, 35, thinking I need a new football club. I've been at one for 15 years, and I got a call within 2 days of me. Obviously, we went out on social media and said Fletcher's been released, and got a call 2 days later from the Chesterfield manager.
Did you think about retiring?
No, not at all. I was 35. Not a chance.
I rate it.
No. Wouldn't even cross my mind at all. I just needed to keep playing. And then I had a few other calls from other clubs, some were non-league, like conference, like I suppose like the National League now. But I wanted to stay in the Football League, and I didn't really want to go all the way to Chesterfield because it was a long way. I wanted something closer, but he kept on at me, and he phoned me, and my wife said, "Why don't you just go up and have a chat with him? You don't have to do anything." But I went up there, and he was brilliant, and within an hour I'd signed.
What's it feel like leaving the club you've been at for 15 years? Because there's it was so many memories with it.
Ghostly. Yeah, it felt like surreal.
Like an empty feeling.
Yeah, ghostly, yeah, like, what am I doing? I've just signed for Chesterfield Football Club, literally. So like 4 days later after I retired, I signed. I didn't want it to let it pan out, because I thought, I'm 35, if they want me now, I better take it, because if I don't and they find someone else, and as the off-season progresses, you find yourself without a club, and then you're just clutching at anything. So when that opportunity come along, I thought, I've got to give it respect, and I've got to go and maybe make a decision straight away. So I did. I had a few offers after that, and I'd said no, I've signed for Chesterfield, but I think I made the right decision. The manager wanted me. He gave me a lot of time at home. I didn't have to move up there with my family. My family stayed here. In fact, if we played Saturday to Saturday, he just wanted me training Thursday, Friday, and play Saturday, and then I could go home, and I could do my own training back here in Bournemouth, and then just drive up on a Wednesday night, ready for training Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Midweek was different. I'd have to stay up maybe, till Tuesday, and then come back down and maybe on the Friday. But it was fantastic what the offer he gave me. It's just, after a year, I had to come back down because it was just a little bit too much. I was 36 now, and I was like, I had another year left on my contract, but I'm going to see if there's anything closer. And then Steve Evans gave me a call at Crawley, and he said, "Would you like to come to us? We're in the National League. We'll replicate your contract at Chesterfield," which wasn't a lot, but I thought, well, okay, that he's going to give me a lot of time off. Crawley's a little bit closer. And then after 6 months there, Eddie Howe gets a job here, and then my whole life changes again. But so that was my 18 months away from the club. Yeah, a year at Chesterfield, which I loved. The supporters were fantastic, and I always said when I left that if he could have picked Chesterfield Football Club up and moved it 100 miles closer to the south, I wouldn't have left. I would have stuck in my second year, because I had an option of a second year, but it was my option. And I remember the supporters coming up to me going, "Fletch, we spoke to you more in a year than we have some of the players who've been here 5 or 6 years," because I always made effort with the supporters when we went to the game, outside the stadium, after the game, away games. I'd always stand outside and have a chat with them before we got on the coach. And I remember, it's just crazy, and you can actually see it on YouTube, if I'm allowed to say YouTube. When we played, when I came back to Bournemouth, we played Chesterfield a couple of times, and they would always sing my name. The song for me was like, "Fletcher, Fletcher, shows your guns," and I'd just lift my arm up and tense it, and then they'd all cheer. It was a standing joke. I even had one supporter dress up as me one year on the final game of the season with big guns out, and he come out, had a big photograph, and I had a good rapport with the supporters. They were brilliant, and every time I played Chesterfield after that, they would be just singing my name, and not even singing the Chesterfield fans' name. They were brilliant, because I'd spent time with them, and I had a great relationship. And then the last game of the season, we played Chesterfield. It was all back at Bournemouth now. We'd just been promoted with Eddie, so we'd had the Great Escape. So it was the next year we got promoted into League.
So this is when you've come back to Bournemouth.
2009, scored the goal in the Great Escape to keep us up against Grimsby. The following year we got promoted.
What's it like, obviously, coming back to the club after 18 months away?
You want me to go into that first? Well, that was just surreal. Yeah.
Just like walking through the doors. What did it feel like?
I'm back.
Yeah, no, didn't know. No, it felt alien to me. But what I was going to say was, we played Chesterfield, and came off the bench. I came off the field, after 80 minutes, and Chesterfield scored the winning goal in the 93rd minute. They beat us 2-1. We went 1-0 up, they beat us 2-1. It was the last ever game at Saltergate, 130 years at Saltergate. They even had the scarves, which I've got one in my little bar area of my house, with half Chesterfield, half Bournemouth, the year, everything, because it was such a iconic game. And came off the pitch. The pitch got invaded. Chesterfield won the game 2-1. I took my shirt off and I promised it to one of our supporters in the stand. It was in the old wooden stand, Chesterfield, in the main stand. And I walked up the steps. All the players ran off the pitch. And all the Chesterfield fans were on the pitch. So there was a few thousand of them. And I'd give my shirt to one of our supporters. My mum and dad were there. And the Chesterfield fans saw me and they all started singing my name. So they could have sang any player, anything about their own football club. And they all started singing my song, right? And it went on for a couple of minutes. And my dad was nearly in tears. And one of the only times I've ever seen him really well up. And I just couldn't believe that all the fans were singing. There's actually a little 20-second clip on YouTube of Saltergate, the fans singing. You can hear them singing my name.
That's unreal. It
was unbelievable. And the goosebumps and the little things like that live with you forever, because you're thinking, why would they sing my name? I was only there a year and I'd been gone 2 years since I last played. And they could have sang any one song, any player, any song about their own football club, and they started singing my song for a couple of minutes. And then the Bournemouth fans were singing my name as well. And I'm stood in the stand while all the fans behind me, the Bournemouth fans, are singing my name. And thousands of Chesterfield fans on the pitch and around the stadium are all singing my name as well. It was surreal.
Mate, that's
and
amazing.
My goosebumps were all over my body. And it was the last ever game at Saltergate. And that memory will live with me forever. It's crazy. So then I went to Crawley, and then I got the call off Eddie, just after he took over. And it was January 2009, yeah. I think he got the job on New Year's Eve.
Did you think he was calling you to come back, or?
No, I'll tell you the story. It was weird. So, I was doing some chores upstairs. I think I was doing the ironing. I don't iron now. I can't be bothered. I hate it. But I was doing the ironing for the missus, and she was downstairs, and I'm listening to the radio in the bedroom. So I'm ironing in the bedroom, and obviously went on to the sport version of the news and said Eddie Howe was to be appointed FC Bournemouth manager on an interim basis after Jimmy Quinn had got the sack. And I was like, oh wow, because obviously I kept in touch with Eddie and that, and I'd been to a few Bournemouth games while I was at Chesterfield in Crawley. He'd come down, and I think he was heading the youth. He'd been given to look over the whole academy. He'd been given that job because when Kevin Bond got the sack, I think they didn't want to sack Eddie because he was a first team coach at the time with Kevin Bond, so they just put him into the academy and had him overseeing the whole academy. He just wanted to stay there because they loved Eddie. He'd been here since he was a youth team player himself. I didn't think they wanted to get rid of him, so he'd seen Jimmy Quinn come and go, and then he got offered the job. And I ran downstairs and said to my wife, Eddie's got the bloody job. Eddie Howe's got the job. She went, I bet he asked you to go back. I went, don't be stupid, you're off your tits. I said, no chance. Is Eddie going to ask me at 36 years of age to come back? Not a chance. 2 days later, phone call. Big in? I said, oh, congratulations, mate. I said, didn't want to pester you, phoning you. I said, but oh, mate, that's incredible. And he went, do you want to come back? And I went, you fucking wind me up. He said, don't do that to me, Ed. I said, stop pissing about. Don't do that to me. He said, nah. He said, I've been thinking about it and I want you back. I want you to run the changing room. I said, Ed, I've got 18 months at Crawley. I've got 6 months left on my contract here, and I got another year as an option. And he went, well, I want you back. And straight away, I was like, you're not taking no for an answer here. I was like, I can't come back. Don't be stupid. You don't want me at 36. He said, I do. I want you back. I want you to run the changing room. I want to galvanise the changing room. I want a leader, and I want someone who's going to be around the boys. He said, we're 10 points adrift. I want someone around. And so that was the beginning of January. So it could have been it might even have been New Year's Day, the day after he got the job, or the second. And I was like, well, let me think about it. I told my wife, and she said, I told you. And I was like, then I'm starting to go into panic mode now, because I'm thinking, no, I don't know what I want to do. I can't go back after 15 years. So I didn't tell too many people apart from my family, and majority of them said, look, you've had 15 years. I think you'd be crazy to go back just to sign for 6 months. That's all he could offer me. The embargo on, money was less than what I was earning at Crawley, although that wasn't an issue. It was just, I was 36, I was thinking, I'm giving up 18 months, and whatever could happen with Crawley, we could get promoted and I could end up playing, or I go to Bournemouth for 5 months and we get relegated, which is probably going to happen because they're 10 points adrift, can't bring any players in, etc., etc.
It's a huge risk.
It's massive risk for my whole family. I have to think of my family now. And then I kept saying, Ed, I'm not sure. And basically in my mind I was thinking, I don't want to tell him no. Even though 90% of my mind was going, no, I'm not going to do it. But I didn't want to, like, in my heart of hearts, tell him no, because he kept saying, come on, Fletcher, I want you to come. And I was like, oh, I'm not sure. And then I was thinking, I'm not going to do it. And then he played 2 games. I think he'd been beat at Rotherham. He'd been beat at 1-0 or 2-1. He'd been beat at Darlington 1-0 or 2-1. So his first 2 games as manager, both away from home, it was definitely Darlington and Rotherham. He'd lost both of them. And then he phoned me again and said, look, I need you to make a decision, yes or no. And I'd played a couple of games in between that, and he kept phoning me going, don't get injured. I'm like, yeah, but what do you mean? I'm not coming anyway. And then he phoned me and he just said, look, I need to know yes or no. And I went, all right, I got to make a decision. And I left it a couple of days, and then my missus, I woke up in the middle of the night and I just said to my missus, I'm going to go. Literally that. She said, well, you just do what you think is right. And I said, it's playing on my mind. And the more it plays on my mind, I'm feeling I'm going to have to say yes, because I didn't want to have any regrets. I didn't want to say no and then think, what could have happened? What if I went back? What if we did stay up? What if it was the best decision of my life? And the only reason I decided yes is because it was Eddie Howe, because he was my mate. He's one of my best mates. Played with him, roomed with him. He was my roommate for many years. I loved him to bits. And it's all right saying yes. I had to go and then see Steve Evans, who's a very tough character, even though he loved me, to go and see. I mean, he's a crazy character as a manager.
The Crawley manager.
Yeah. He obviously went to Leeds and Rotherham, and yeah, he's nuts in a funny way. He's got some stories about him, and I had to go and see him. So I said to Ed, I will. I said, but I got to go and see Steve Evans. He said, okay, go and see him then. So after training, we trained at Crawley down. We always trained at the stadium at Crawley. We went off to another school to train, but we always met at the stadium. So I remember going to his office thinking, right, I'm going to have to say to him, look, I want to go to Bournemouth. Because he could have said, nah, piss off, you're not coming. And that would have been it, all done. And Ed's always saying to me, go and ask him. I'm like, yeah, but you don't know, it's not easy to go and ask him. Do you know what type of character he is? So I remember walking past the manager's room and I bottled it, and then I went and hid around the corner trying to get my breath. I was like, no, I can't go in. And then I just bottled it. I went, no, fuck it, I'm going in. I went, Steve, can I have a word? He went, yeah, of course you can, Fletch. Come and sit down. What's the matter? And I said, do you know Eddie Howe's got the job? And he turned around to me and went, do you want to go?
He knew.
And I went, you knew, didn't you? And he went, I had an inkling you might. I said, has Eddie spoke to you? He said, no, but I've got wind of Eddie might want you. So he knew. He was just waiting for me to come in. And I went, what do you think? He said, well, Fletch, if it wasn't Bournemouth, I wouldn't have you in this office right now.
Oh, such a sound way to be.
Yeah, and I said, well, if it wasn't Bournemouth, I wouldn't be in your office right now. I said, I wouldn't even waste your time. I said, but I can't. I said, for a couple of weeks now, Steve, I said, it's the only thing on my mind and I don't want to pass it by. I said, and I knew how much I love the club. And I said, and if it wasn't for Eddie, I wouldn't even be in your office. Never mind Bournemouth. I said, it's just because it's Eddie. And he said, do you want to go on your heart of hearts? I said, yes, because I've thought about it for 2 weeks and I keep saying no. And then I said, it's just struck me all of a sudden like a thunderbolt that I have to go. I said, I have to make that plunge and I have to try. And he said, right, give me 24 hours to try and find a striker to replace you and I'll relinquish you of your contract, which was incredible for him to do. Because he could have said, no, you've got 6 months left on this contract and then we'll see what happens at the end of the season with your option. But
so what happens if he says no, just in terms of if you wanted to leave?
Don't know, nothing. I just stayed to call it, yeah. But yeah, I couldn't just, because you're not allowed to go to another club if you just walk out. You can't. So Steve, I owe him such a debt of gratitude that is, and Eddie to a degree. Eddie always says to me, I owe Steve so many drinks for allowing you to do that. And on that night, so it was a Thursday night, it was the 22nd of January, and he phoned me about 9 o'clock at night. He said, I've got a lad who I can get in on loan. Big lad, forgot his name, something Matthews from Salisbury. I remember his last name, can't remember his first name. A very similar type of striker to me, just obviously a younger version because I was 36. He said, I'll let you go. So then I'm on the phone to Eddie at 9 o'clock. He said, right, come in tomorrow, we'll do all the paperwork, blah, blah, blah. But the club was under an embargo and had gone into administration, hadn't there, and point deduction. So we had nobody working upstairs. We had Neil Vacher, who's now, or was the club secretary, he's now obviously still at the club. I walked in, met him about 8:30 the next day. And that was strange because Ed wasn't even in then, and signed the contract. Eddie came in, said, come on then, we got to go into training. We're training on the pitch. It was the day before the game, so it was a Friday. And I said, well, I got a bit of a dodgy hamstring. I said, I need it strapped up. So I went and had a quick rub off the physio, and he's getting me off the bench. Come on. What he'd done is, as I walked out onto the pitch, he'd got all the lads to do a guard of honour for me.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, and we had a bit of banter with it, and I turned around and pretended to clap the fans and everything. So I walked through, and all the players had made a guard of honour for me to go back on the pitch. And I trained on the Friday. Luckily got through with my hamstring. We were playing Wycombe Wanderers on the Saturday, who were top of the league. They were top by a few points. So it was top v bottom, basically. And we were expected to get trounced. And played up front with Brett Pittman. We went 1-0 down after 3 minutes. Our keeper, David Button, who now plays in the top flight, they tried to take it round their striker, Matt Harrold, on the edge of his box, tried to take it round him. He just nicked it off him and put it into an empty net. And I walked back the halfway line, and I was like, oh my God, what have I come into? The crowd had doubled. We had 6,000 at the crowd. The last crowd they had was just over 3. So it was Eddie's first game back, Eddie's first game as manager, because the first 2 he'd had away from home. So it was his first game as manager at home. I'd come back and the crowd had doubled, so we'd obviously put a few thousand on the gate. Brett Pittman equalised with a 30-yard free kick right in the top corner. Then we went 2-1 up at half-time. Pierce, our captain, centre-half, he scored from a corner. And then we scored a deflected goal in the second half. I think it was Jake Robinson scored, the right winger we had in. And we won the game 3-1. And the place just lifted and the belief came around the place. And I remember Eddie phoning me up that Saturday night. He said, Big, I can't believe what you've come and done. I had a great game as well. I dominated the centre-halves. I played every game from then till the end of the season. And everyone after that like it was my last game, because I did it for Eddie. I wanted to just make sure I gave everything. I was going to give every single game, whether I played, came off the bench or started, my whole heart and everything I should have done when I was younger. I wish I'd went into with the mentality I had earlier on in my career, is what I did at the age of 36 trying to play. But it was for Eddie, and I wanted him to succeed. I wanted the club to stay up. And I actually played every game bar one. So I started every game. He actually thought I was just going to be a bit part player off the bench and be around the changing room and galvanise the lads and be a voice for him. And I ended up starting every game bar one till the end of the season. So I played in all 19 games. And that one I came off the bench anyway, and all accumulated to that Grimsby game at home. And they were down the bottom with us, and it was almost winner takes all. And I remember it being a full house, a full 10,000, and the build up to the game. We just beat Chester the week before, who were down the bottom as well. We had to beat them, and we beat them 2-0. Brett scored, and I think Anton Robinson or Liam Feeney scored. I remember the big celebrations afterwards, and then we had to beat Grimsby, and we survived with the 17-point deduction, minus 17, and obviously 10 when Ed took over. So come down to that Grimsby game. And
are you feeling like going up to that game? What's the culture like? Well,
apart from people like, I think it was me and Lee Bradbury in the team, we were the older statesmen, so we tried to keep things cool as we could. But because we had such a young team, they probably didn't feel the pressure. And you look back now, if we'd have got relegated, the club would have gone out of existence. Probably would have went into liquidation. We had no owner. We had nobody working up in the offices. There was just Ed and JT and a couple of other people probably doing a lot of voluntary work, and like say Neil Vacher, the old club secretary, doing the work of about 10 different people. We'd have probably gone out of existence and start again 10 leagues below, whatever, like Aldershot had to do, and there's a few other teams done it. So there was a lot of pressure on us, and we knew it, but I think it helped having a lot of young lads who didn't understand the pressure, because I'm not being funny, if we'd have got relegated, those lads probably wouldn't have got clubs. They'd all just, because they were on loan from other clubs that hadn't really been established, they would have just probably gone to play non-league if they were lucky. And the pressure of that, I remember doing the team talk and on the pitch, because I used to talk in the huddle, and I remember Ed just reiterating Ed's words was like, just be calm, we've got more than enough in this team to win the game. Whatever happens in the game, just stay calm, we'll have chances. And I was just trying to keep everything, because the hype of the game was huge. I mean, it made national news, never mind local news. And
penultimate game.
Yeah, it was a winner takes all. It stays in the Football League, and for us probably keeps us as a football club. Otherwise, like say we go into liquidation, we go out of existence for a period. And I just tried to be calm, and we went 1-0 down just before half time after having a lot of the play. And we came in at half time, and Ed just stayed really cool and just said, look, we'll get chances. We've got to be a bit more forceful. We've got to take the game. We've got to get the ball wide. We've got to get crosses in the box. We've got to play on the front foot. And then they got a man sent off, and then they got another man sent off. So they were down to 9 men. I think we'd got a goal in between that just after half-time, which gave us a confidence booster. Liam Feeney. Remember Danny Holland smashed it against the bar from 25 yards and it rebounded out and he smashed it in on the half volley. So it was 1-1 after about 10 minutes into the second half. So the big pitch invasion and we're back in the game. And then they say they went down to 9 men and they were very resilient. And then just remember thinking, which I never really thought ever in my career, and I wish I had, I was thinking, I'm going to score. I'm going to get the winning goal. This is why I've come back. This is it. This is my time. If there's ever going to be a time, there's a reason I've waited my whole career for this moment. I'm going to score. And a cross came in and I headed it. I got over the centre half and I headed it and it just over the bar. And I kept thinking, oh, that was my chance. That was my chance to score. It was about 10 yards out and I got above him. It was a tough header and I just headed it over the bar. And I was like, oh no. But I kept thinking, I'm going to get another chance. I'm going to score. I have to score. And I never thought like that in my career. Like I said, I wish I had. And then the ball dropped to me in the box. Cross came in. Mark Molesley jumped for the header. He's our midfielder. He lost the header, but then the ball fell to my chest and I just chested it down, turned on a 90 degrees and just thought, I've just got to smash this, and just didn't pick my spot. I just thought, hit the target, and all sorts goes through your mind in them, that 1.5 seconds, whatever it was, from chesting it to hitting it. You just, it's almost like you do your whole career flashes past you and you just think, what if, what could be? And it's just a moment that'll live with me forever. And the ball hits the roof of the net and I just caught it so sweetly from round about the penalty spot. So I chested it down and volleyed it in. I actually let the ball bounce because the way I chested it, I had to turn, and obviously I'm not the quickest as well, so I had to let the ball bounce, but luckily no one was in a couple of yards of me, and just as I hit it, a lad started closing me down and I struck the ball and I went through a crowd of about 3 or 4 players and smashed in the roof of the net, and then the shirt came off and I ran down the line and all the players jumped on me. I got some great pictures and memories from that, and it was on 80 minutes, and then you're just thinking, please hold on, please be
part the bus.
Oh mate, that is 10 minutes there. Like, you're just thinking, I don't want anyone else to score.
Tense, yeah.
I don't even want another Bournemouth player to score.
This is my moment.
This is my moment. Don't kill it. And because they were down to 9 men, we did keep the ball brilliantly at the back, and them 10 minutes, it seemed like a lifetime, but I couldn't even tell you if anything happened in them 10 minutes because it's just a blur. You're just thinking, please, 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 just let it be the winning goal. And I remember when the final whistle went, big pitch invasion, everybody ran down the tunnel, and I just ran down past the tunnel towards the away end where it is now. And my wife and kids were up in the stand, and I just ran up the steps and gave my wife and kids a big hug because it was all worth the risk of me coming back. And went in the changing room and seeing all the pictures and the videos and the -17 videos afterwards. It was just an incredible moment.
It was destiny, mate.
Yeah, and we did a big piece afterwards and it was all publicised, and we did like a feature, like almost like a feature documentary on it. And I always said it was written in the stars, it was fate. But the first time ever in my career I actually thought I was actually going to score. Thought it was meant to be, and yeah, it's a memory that'll live with me forever. It wasn't a winning goal in a cup final, it never got us promoted, but it probably kept the club in existence, and it was that small tiny catalyst to help us go on and achieve what we've achieved in the 12 years since, which is obviously getting promoted the following year, then into the Championship under Eddie, then into the Premier League for 5 years, and back in the Premier League now. And you like to think that one goal might have just
set the foundation for it.
Yeah, 100%. You don't think about that until now when you look back over the years, but you just live in that moment. And I played for another 4 years after that. So, the following year, the same team, we got promoted into League One. We got automatic promotion. So it just proves how positive the team was and what winning can do, and mentality and just confidence. And the same team got promoted the following year. And the following year, when Eddie went to Burnley, I took over as assistant manager for a little bit with Lee Bradbury, and we got into the playoffs and we just got beat on penalties in the semi-final. Otherwise, I could have been in as management in the Championship. And then Ed come back and took us up the following year, and probably achieved more in my final 5 years at Bournemouth than I did in the first 15. It was crazy. I have more memories. That's why you never know in football what's around the corner. And
how does it feel now reminiscing about specifically that game against Grimsby?
Yeah, it gives you goosebumps, and I get tingles, and
I've got goosebumps listening to it.
Me too, yeah.
And when I watch the videos back and the clips on social media, and every year when that date comes around, I have it tattooed on my arm, 25th of April, it's 2009, surrounded by a football and etc. I made my right arm with a few tattoos, memorable to my career, and it comes around and you just have great memories of it. It's
how can you not believe in destiny and fate when you hear that story from just from a young lad joining Bournemouth, and then you do something like that? It's just
from doing kick-ups in the garden with your granddad to all the way to
scoring the goal. And another thing, when I got the following season, I had the stand named after me, and I remember going up to see the chairman at the time, Eddie Mitchell. Eddie Howe said to me, Eddie wants to see you in his office, and I was thinking, oh shit, what have I done? I'm 37, I can't have done that much wrong. Surely, I've been a good boy, I've been a good leader, we're doing okay in League One. And he said, I want to name the North Stand after you and put your picture up there and big writing, and I was almost in tears because it's something you can't dream of as a kid. You just think of the legends who've had stands named after them at big clubs like Shankly, Sir Alex Ferguson, Brian Clough. You think of all these, Bobby Moore, you just think of all these legends, and then little old me has a stand named after them while I'm still playing.
Did you not consider yourself a legend then at that point?
You hear people say it, but you don't think like that, no. But even when I opened the stand and had it named after me, I took more stick than I did anything else, because all the other centre-halves from the opposition used to look up to it for one half when they were facing that way and say, Fletch, do I have to look up your big ugly mug? For 45 minutes. But I was so honoured. It was like something you just can't believe would ever happen when you moved down to Bournemouth at the age of 19 in 1992 and thinking, well, you're going to have a stand named after you in 25 years' time, 20 years' time, or what was it, 2010. So yeah, in 20 years' time or 18 years' time, you're going to have a stand named after you.
It's what you dream of.
It's just, well, you don't even dream of it because you just think it would never happen, do you? It's not something you start off as a footballer, as a kid, and think, hey, my ambition is to have a stand named after me. And there was a little stat went around that I was the only player, definitely in England, we thought in Europe, that has ever had a stand named after them while I was still playing. Usually it's after you pass away or you retire. Maybe they're trying to tell me something, I should retire. But yeah, so I played for another 3 years while I had the stand. So yeah, that was in 2010, and still on to this day. Every time I walk across the pitch or I'm out there warming the lads up on a Saturday, I do look up and pinch myself and think, wow, it's my stand. And I had some big Premier League managers come up to me and go, that's your stand, that's incredible. And I tell my little story and bore the arse off them for 1 minute, telling them how it came about. I was still playing when I was there, and I said, yeah, it's like Jose Mourinho asked me about it, and I just sat chatting with him for a minute.
Wow.
And then when he walked away, I picked my phone up and phoned my parents straight up and go, guess what, you wouldn't believe, I just had Jose Mourinho asking me about my stand. They're like, nah. And I told my mates back in Hartlepool, they're like, bullshit. And I was like, I'm telling you, he was talking to me about my stand, because he looked up and went, is that you? And I was like, yeah, it's me. He's like, wow, it's incredible. And then I thought, right, it's more one chance to tell him a little story of how it happened.
Got to get it in there.
Yeah. So now it's so honourable. If we ever do get a new stadium, I don't know what'll happen.
They got to take it with them, haven't they?
I don't know. I've always thought that, and people do say to me, if they ever built a new stadium, do you think you'd still have your stand? I went, I don't know, because obviously I think one man does deserve it more than anyone, Eddie Howe, after what he did. I mean, how they
both of you,
how they can not name a stand after him in the future, I don't know, but we'll see. We'll see what the chief exec and the new owner has in store, and that's if we get a new stadium. So I'll cherish it for this time being, just in case.
Cling on to it every last minute. So how does the career come to an end then? Because you mentioned retirement a minute ago.
Yeah, well, we got promoted to the Championship. So Eddie, I was assistant manager, and then I stepped down.
Whilst playing, yeah?
Yeah, while I was still playing. So I was 39, stepped down. For whatever reason, I don't really want to go into that, but I went back as a player, went on loan for the first time in my career at the age of 39 to Plymouth, only because Carl Fletcher, one of our ex-players, obviously same name as me, we're not related, which people think we are, but he was the manager and they were in a dogfight in League Two, so it was almost back at like the Grimsby situation again. And he said, would you come along and help us out? And I went there for the first time in my career on loan, so it took me till 39 years of age to go out on loan. God knows what the Plymouth fans thought. We're getting a 39-year-old in, but they were brilliant with me. They loved me, and I loved them, and I loved the 6 games I played for them towards the end of the season. We stayed up, and we had a little mini Great Escape, and we had some good characters in the changing room. I'm still chatty with them lads to this day, and we had some young lads who've now matured and in the Plymouth team, and we're now playing at a good level in the Championship, and a couple of them in the Premier League, and they've went on to do wonders, and I still speak to them. And it's weird how you can just get attached to people and a club even after just like say 6 weeks.
And the moments, right?
Yeah,
like
in the moment,
staying up.
because we stayed up and it was a great achievement and I played in all the games and still never scored, but did my bit. And yeah, that was like another mini Great Escape. And I was like, wow, I've got another little thing going on. And then Eddie come back, because obviously when I stepped down, Lee Bradbury was the manager. I wasn't in the team much and Lee let me go out on loan. And then Paul Groves took over and I played a couple of little cameo appearances here and there. And then I was probably told, like, this would be the end at the end of the season, because that was when my contract was ending. And then lo and behold, Eddie takes over in the October, comes back and gets me back involved, and I'm on the bench again and involved, and I was getting little cameo appearances and I was part of it, helping run the changing room for him again. And it was like, here we go again, 18 months later. And we got promoted to the championship. I think we were 21st in the league out of 24 when Eddie took over. And without stopping, we went all the way to the top of the league. Then we dipped towards the end a little bit in March and April. And then we picked up again, and we only missed out on winning the league by 1 point on the last kick of the game, because I think Doncaster beat Brentford at Brentford in the last kick of the game, and then they won it. But we'd already been promoted and we'd finished second runners-up. So we're now in the championship for only the second time in the club's history. Went into the office. I knew Ed hadn't really talked about it, so in my mind I said to my missus it could go either way. It wasn't like when I went in with Kevin Bond in 2007 and was expecting another year. I said I hope my heart allows him, or my heart allows me to play for one more year. But in my head I was thinking this could go either way. And I said, look, we're in the champ, I want to play a different way. I don't want to stop you playing, and I'd never take it away, because I know how obsessed you are with the game. But he said, I don't think we can go down this avenue. And he said, I'm doing it more for you. He said, because I know how much you love playing, and I don't want to leave you out week after week in the champ and not even be on the subs bench, because he said, I don't think that's fair on you. And he said, after what you've achieved and what you've been through, I don't think, in his heart, he didn't want to do that to me. He said it would break him in half to see my disappointment and not being involved. And I ummed and ahed, and he said, if you want to go and play somewhere else, if you think you can keep playing, I'm not going to stop you. He said, but I don't want you to leave the football club if you're prepared to retire. He said, because I want you to go into recruitment and try and build the department up, or help build the department. So I thought about it for a couple of days, and because I wasn't really heart set on then going anywhere, and I had a couple of inquiries from like League 2 clubs just for a year, and I thought, why? Because then in 1 year's time I'm going to be in the same situation again. I can't then come back to Eddie and go, Ed, can I come in and get me a job? Can I be part of the football club? I had to make a decision, and it had to be the right one. And yeah, it was hard to get my head around it, because I thought I was Peter Pan, I could play forever, which you would after 24 years. And I said, okay, I'm prepared to retire. My only dilemma would have been if I'd have been close to 1,000 games. I was on 836, so I wasn't quite close. But if I was on something like 995 games, I would have had to play. I would have had to get 1,000. But
or just be like, come on, Ed, give me 5 games.
Just give me a contract till like October, 2 months. Put me on for 30 seconds every game. So then I went into recruitment for a couple of years before I came over on as a first team coach. So that's how it happened. It broke my heart. I was very upset. Ed was great because he's one of my best friends. He comforted me. He said, I know how you feel. He had to retire at the age of 29. I was nearly 41, so I had a hell of a longevity in the game. But it's hard because it's weird, because the longer you play, the longer you think you can keep going. It's not like you think your time's up, because you just think you Peter Pan, like I say, and you can just keep going on forever.
And at that point, I guess
my body was wrecked.
That's what
all
I mean.
The injuries, 11 operations, over my knees.
You played
a couple of hernia ops, ankle ops. I had 16 operations in my career, and all the head injuries. My body had paid its toll. All them headers jumping up and down and landing on my body. 15 stone. It paid its toll. Not just games, but training as well for 24 years and
battered.
Yeah, basically.
You've played football for longer than you've lived, right? At that point,
yeah,
pretty much professional football. Anyway,
I had 4 years longer than that. Yeah,
which is insane, because you've obviously been playing football.
I started
before then.
at 16 and played for 24. So yeah, 8 more years than I'd actually lived. So yeah.
That's incredible.
It is incredible.
So what's it like going from playing for all these years, being a club legend, you've got a stand named after you, now going into sort of like a first team coach role?
Yeah, well, I had 2 years in recruitment. It was 2.5 years. And then in the January of 2015, we just got in the Premier League. I went to open an event because I'm ambassador for the club. When I retired, I become ambassador for the club as well. So I had like a dual role ambassador. So I'd take the players to events, I'd represent the club, I'd go into whatever the chairman at the time, Eddie Mitchell, wanted me to do, or Eddie. So I'd go into businesses, companies, I'd represent the club, and I still do. Still got the title as ambassador. So I went to an opening of a doctor's surgery, and Ed didn't know I was going, and Ed turned up as well because he knew the doctor as well. I was the club doctor at the time. And he went, I didn't know you were coming. And I had popped into training every now and then. He'd phone me up from over the recruitment side of the building, over in the main building. And he'd phone me up and go, come on, Fletcher, I need you in training. We need some help, blah, blah, blah. Because I was still playing, I could go up against the centre halves, blah, 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 do whatever he wanted me to do. So I was still popping over once every week, once every 2 weeks. But then we went to the doctor's surgery, opened it up, put his arm around me, and he went, do you fancy coming over to the other side, permanent? And I was like, honestly, as blatant as that and as quick as that. And I went, yeah, why didn't you ask me that a while ago?
Were you expecting it? Or?
No. I was just doing my routine, going out as an ambassador, and Ed just turned up because he knew the club doctor as well, and he didn't know I was going. He went, I didn't know you were coming, Fletch. I went, yeah, well, obviously I come to these events. And he went, okay, and then we had the photograph taken. He went, why don't you come over tomorrow and we'll come over on a permanent basis. You can still do your scouting, you can still look at games if you want, but we'll have you over on a daily basis. I love having you over there. And I was like, oh my God, I felt like a child all over again, excited at Christmas. I raced back home and I went to my missus, like, I'm joining the first team coaching. He said, we'll just see how it goes till the end of the season. I think they needed someone to help out in training, set up training, just be around it, because he only had one other helper, JT as assistant, and then one other coach, Simon Weatherston, who's now with him at Newcastle, and I stayed with him all the way along. Mossy was goalkeeping coach, Neil Moss, and I came over, just learned from that January over till the end of the season, and we stayed up in the Premier League, which was incredible. I mean, I think my first game was Crystal Palace away. We won 2-1. I think we played Portsmouth in the cup on Saturday, and we beat them away. Then we played Palace on the Tuesday, and it was brilliant just being around the boys every day. And then he just come to me at the end of the season. We always have a meeting with Ed at the end of the season individually, and he said, how did you think? I said, yeah, brilliant. He said, well, I want you to stay on for next season. I want you to take your coaching badges. I want you to get involved. Just keep doing what you're doing. Be around the players. Be that go-between like you were in the changing room as a player. Just be around the players. Let me know what things need changing, happening. He said, because he said, obviously you can't go in the changing room, just be a voice around the players. And he said, I want you to do a bit of everything.
Was it easy to adapt to that role?
Yeah, like piece of piss for me. I loved it. It was just going back to my normal role.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can't just walk in the lads' changing room because they'll be like, well, hang on, Fletcher's a coach. I'm not just going to go in and go, oh, what are you talking about? But I'd have ears, I'd listen, good and bad. And if there's any problems, I'd sort it myself. And if it didn't sit right with me, I'd go to Ed and go, look, I think you need to address this because so-and-so, this has happened. And he'd go, okay. But I didn't want to be knocking on his door every 2 minutes going, oh, guess what? I've got a headache today and he's not feeling great. Yeah, well, you deal with that, Fletch, because Ed would be like, come on, Fletch.
Yeah.
So sometimes it was tough. But if it didn't sit right with me, I'd always tell him.
Yeah.
And I'd be his eyes and ears and be around it, and I'd go out in training and help set up training and whatever Ed wanted me to do. I then ended up taking the strikers a little bit. Then I'd take the defenders for some heading, and I'd get involved in little parts of the drill because I was still quite fit. Obviously, I just retired, and I'd be getting involved in little keep balls. And
of course you did.
Yeah, loving it. I was like,
can't help himself.
I remember coming back in training once, right? And I
still got it.
Oh, smash Matt Ritchie knocked him out basically before a game on a Friday. We were doing set pieces and some 11v11. So he's gone big and really come out and be the striker up top. I think we were playing a team and they had big lads up top. It could have been like a Burnley or something. He said, so I want you to be that player. Okay, first ball in, ball over the top, Matt Ritchie being small, I backed in, bang, elbow straight in his mush, knocked him out. And Ed was like, fucking hell, Fletch. I went, mate, I can't jump without using my arms. And all the lads were like, Jesus Christ. I went, mate, I didn't mean to do it. Next thing, Tommy Elphick knocked him out, banged him one, took one in the head. I was like, oh, I'm not going to jump now with my arms. I'm going to keep my arms behind my side while I jump. I'm like, I'm sorry about that. There's a funny story when I was coach, we signed Simon Francis. When me and Lee Bradbury was manager, first day in training, I broke Frano's nose. We did set pieces and corners, ball come over, I got right across him and broke his nose. So when he has this bump in his nose that you see him now, it used to be straight. And it was his first day in training. He always tells the story. That was his welcoming.
You really let him know, mate.
Oh, it was an accident, by the way. I didn't mean to do it. No, I didn't mean to do it. I just caught him. And I didn't mean to knock Matt Ritchie down and smash Tommy. And I was like, oh my God, if I'm going to join in, I'm going to have to let them smash me. And then I used to become a battering ram for the lads, because Ed would be like, all right, we used to do it by percentages. Ed would be like, right, I want you to go up against Cookie and Nathan Aki and Tommy Elphick and Frano, whoever was playing centre half, Jack Simpson sometimes, the younger ones. And I would have to say to him, right, what percentage do you want me to give him? He'd be like, I don't know, just give him a little bit. Well, what's a little bit? Because my little bit is a lot. I don't want to smash him. So he'd be like, right, just 50%. And I'd do 50%, and he'd be going, then he'd go, Biggin, I want you to do a bit more than that. I went, hang on, you just told me 50%. He goes, yeah, but a bit more. So I said 70% then. I'd be like, I just start to judge it by the feel. Yeah, just gauge it by how I felt. And like, if it was closer to a game, I'd be like very careful. But then I would be, because I wasn't protecting myself, getting my arms up, I would be taking them in the back of the head. And I'm like 44, 45, 46. This is going on for a few years, by the way. So I'm like jumping with the lads at 47, 48 years of age, taking one in the dish, taking battering around the head, because I'm not allowed to jump up and protect myself with my elbows just in case I catch one of them. So I'm just like a battering ram. I'm like, Ed, can I just tell you, like, I'm 47, can't keep doing it.
And he's like, come on, Big, and give him 100%.
Yeah, Tyrone Mings, he's like, I beat Tyrone Mings in the air once in training when we went to America and we had pre-season, and we were playing a crossing game. It was like, it was a building mentality, defending crosses, and we'd have a couple of corners, couple of free kicks, blah, blah, blah. And it was one team against the other, and I was in the other team, and I got above Mingsy and headed one in. And I remember Ed turning around to Mingsy and going, don't get disappointed, son. He's done it to better players than you. And I was buzzing. I was 40. Well, I'll tell you when it was, 90. It was 2016. So 6 years ago, I was 44. 44 years of age, getting all above Mingsy and heading it in the roof of the net. And it gave me a massive buzz. Mate, a buzz. It was like back playing again. And as the years have gone on, I can't really jump now. I'm so worried about landing with my dodgy knees. So I have to, like, I can lean up against lads. But I remember going up against, like say, Mingsy and things like that. And the gaffer wanted me to do it, but I was always worried about injuring them. And I don't think he was worried about me getting injured, because I used to say to him, you're not giving me any protection, Ed. Just get on with it, Big. He was brutal.
What was
so I still loved it. Yeah, I love being across here. And every year I've developed, and now I've been over here, like, coming up 7 years now. So it's been fantastic. I've seen so many things.
What was it like when Eddie Howe left? Not specifically for you.
Strange. One of the strangest days of my life in a football environment, yeah. Because I thought he was just going to carry on, and we were going to go down the championship, but he'd stay and he'd get us promoted straight away back up, especially with the squad we had. Although we knew we'd lose a couple of players, and then he phoned me up and said, Big, and I'm going to be leaving. And I was in tears on the phone. I was inconsolable. I remember phoning the chief exec, Neil Blake, up, Richard Hughes, Eddie. I was just in tears. I was like, why? And obviously I can't go into too much detail, but I think Ed just wanted to take a step away from football for a while. I think he might have done it anyway, even if we'd have stayed up. And I just felt empty inside. I felt we'd lost our leader. I'd lost my best friend. What are we going to do? Who's going to take... Nobody can do what Ed can do. Who's going to take on the role? He'd built the club up with the help of Max Denham, obviously the owner. Ed had built every department, really, from the media to the commercial, to the analysts, to the medical, to the sports science, to our environment. He had a vision and built it all. And we'd lost that one person who I thought was irreplaceable, and sort of still is, really, in some degree, or has been. But the only consoling factor was that Jason Tyndall had stayed, and he was part of the furniture, and he'd been with Ed all the way along since Ed took over in 2009. So it felt like I'd lost my dad, but we kept our mum, if you know what I mean, if I do it like in a family way. So we'd lost our leader in the dad, but the mums took over. It's fine. She can lead the troops, and it was great. But obviously, unfortunately, JT lost his job. I think it was in the January or the February. And that was tough as well, because now you've lost your dad, and now you've lost your mum. Then what? And we still had all my siblings there, because Steve Purchase was still here, Neil Moss was still here, Simon Weatherston, the coach, was still here, which we were under Eddie. But we've lost one of our leaders, one of your parents who's guiding you. So obviously when Jonathan Woodgate come in and took over with Stephen Purchase as assistant, it was strange, and it was like we all clubbed together. We just had to galvanise, and in adversity you jump on things and you all help out. And we nearly got promoted back in the Prem. We just missed out in the playoff semi-final to Brentford. And then obviously Scott Parker came in the next year and felt like a bit of a leader again, although he brought his own entourage of people, which was great. He brought in 5 other lads with him, so his assistant manager, head of goalkeeping, head analyst, and 2 lads in sports performance. So obviously, unfortunately, with that, people were relinquished of their roles here, like Stephen Purchase, who'd been here for many years as a coach, Simon Weatherston, the other first team coach, and Neil Moss. As it was, it worked out perfect because obviously they went up to Newcastle with Eddie. He had his ready-made team, didn't he? He had everybody apart from myself who he'd had at Bournemouth ready to go to Newcastle, because by the time he took the job, Jason had been out of work for 10 months. Stephen Purchase and Simon Weatherston for a few months. The only person he didn't take up was Neil Moss, so he had his ready-made team, really.
Did you think you were going to get the call up there?
Everybody else did. That's all I used to get asked, and even Scott Parker would come to me, the management and the other lads, Matt Wells' assistant, and they'd say to me, has Ed been in touch with you? Because they thought I would just go up there, especially being from the northeast, just down the road, 20 minutes down the road, half an hour down the road from Newcastle is where I was born. So I think everybody thought I might. I think a lot of supporters thought I might because they would come in and asking me. Ed would never ask me. He wouldn't. The professionalism in him, and he knows how much I love this football club. He would never come to me and say to me, Fletch, I want you up at Newcastle. Whether he did or he didn't, I don't think he'd ever do that, because he wouldn't want me to make a decision and leave a club I've been at for over 2 periods for 29 years.
Yeah, crazy.
30 years I've been down here, but obviously the 18 months I spent away at Chesterfield and Crawley, but it's basically 29 years. I don't think he'd want to put me in a dilemma and ask me the question. So whether he does or doesn't want me to go there. So I never made contact with him and spoke about that. Obviously I was texting him all the time and WhatsApping him. He's one of my best mates. I always did, even after he left here. And I'd speak to JT and Perchy. I'd still do to this day. I'm at least in contact with them once a week, one of them, because I want Newcastle to do well. I want them to strive and do well. And they're my friends, and my lifelong friends. And in Eddie, JT, Perchy, Simon Weatherston, some of the best friends I've ever had and always will be. So I want them to do well. But no, Ed would never phone me and never has, and none of them have, and said, you'd love it here, Fletch, come here, we would love to have you here. No, I think out of respect, and for me being in the position I am at this club, they would never ask me. Listen, if I didn't have my job here, then I might be hopeful of a call, but at this present time, no, we've never spoke about anything ever to do with me going up to Newcastle or Newcastle wanting me or Eddie wanting me or anything like that. So we just both got on with our jobs, and we're both very respectful. We both always text each other when we win a game, or maybe not so much if we lose a game. I'm not going to text them if they lose, but if they win a game and they're doing really well, I always say, well, congratulations. But we mainly speak about normal things in life. If I ever text Eddie or Jason or Simon or Steve Purchase, I just speak about normal things. How's life going on? How's the family? How's the kids? Yeah, maybe a little question here and there in football, like, oh, you're flying, you're doing well, boys are on fire. But we never really go into too much detail. And then when they come back in times off or international breaks, I do my best to try and see them and be around them. And when we played Newcastle earlier on the season, I stayed up there and had a night out with them and saw Ed after the game for a few hours. And yeah, I have a great relationship, and I'll always be in touch with them. And I say, you never know what happens in football. You never can. But I always say, Eddie could always end up back here for his third stint, couldn't he? Everything comes in threes, so you just don't know down the line what could happen. But I'm loving my life here at this present time. Long may that continue.
For sure, and I guess that sort of brings us full circle to the present now, obviously with you at the football club. What is on the next chapter for you and the football club moving forward?
Cool. That's a massive question that I can't answer. All I want us to do is survive this season. But when I say survive, I don't mean survive by the skin of our teeth. I want us to play good football, and we have been phenomenal, especially in the last few weeks. I think we've been very unfortunate in a couple of the games, Tottenham, Leeds, where we've been 2 goals to the good in both games and got punished for every tiny mistake. But I think we've played some fantastic football under Gary O'Neill. I think the boys have bought into what he's about. I think they've played for him. I think he's given them confidence, and we all have. We've all stepped up, which you do when a manager and his staff are relinquished of their job, which Scotty was after the Liverpool game. You've got it's all hands to the pump. You want to galvanise the players. You've got to give them confidence, and I think it's been really good. So I want us to survive. I want us to survive, but what we're basically saying is I want us to be in the Premier League next season. I don't want us just to survive. And people say, oh, you got away with that, you were lucky. You can't be lucky in the Premier League. You've got to do well just to even finish, 17th. So yeah, I want us to survive the season and have a good showing of what we're about, because if we've got a new owner coming in and he's going to, give us assets, he's going to give us money to buy players, he's going to progress the football club, he's going to do the training ground straight away, which is going to bring in a good infrastructure for the football club, because we've been missing a proper training ground for many, many years. I say if we can get a few players in January, that'd be fantastic. I know he's got big hopes and big ambitions for this football club, as Mr. Foley. So, he's a proper businessman, and I think it'll be fantastic for this football club going forward. So, my ambition is to be here as long as I can and be out there with the first team boys and do my ambassador role as long as I can. I know this is just me saying it, and you're thinking, well, that's an obvious thing for him to say, but why would I want anything? I don't want anything else to change. I just want to have success in the Premier League. That'll be amazing.
Do you want to move into management?
No, I'm happy doing what I'm doing. Not at the moment, no. I'm like, say, you never know in football what happens. You can never say no, and every time I get asked that question, I say no, not at this present time. I'm happy being the first team coach. If that means I'm getting more involved with Gary O'Neill than I ever did before, then as in like hands-on, then so be it. But I still be under the same role I've always done, unless I'm told any different. So I just want us to have longevity in the Premier League, be as successful as we can. These are all the usual things I'm going to say, but it does, when I've been here for so long and seen the football club go through so many stages of its life and of its entirety, from good and bad to indifferent. When the good times are here, you want them to continue, and like say, if we can stay in the Premier League for many, many years and build the club, and if that's building the training ground and maybe a new stadium, I don't know what the plans are for that, but that would be great if we could, or at least extend the stadium, have a team and management and staff where we can turn around and go, we're in a good place. I think that's the most important for Bournemouth Football Club, because I remember after about our third or fourth year in the Premier League, and I would speak to a lot of journalists before games, and I'd come and have a chat with them, and people who are on the radio and TV, and they always used to go, oh, you'll be all right this season. You're an established Premier League club now. And I used to think, you do not know what you're talking about. What do you mean we're an established Premier League club? We're not Arsenal, Man United, Chelsea, Liverpool, Tottenham, Man City. They're established Premier League clubs. Everyone else in that Premier League, and I can talk about everyone really, even your clubs down from that, your West Hams, your Evertons, your Southamptons, your Leicesters of this world, they won't be thinking they're established Premier League clubs, because you just have to have one bad season. Yeah, they're bigger clubs than us, of course they are in stature, but they just have to have one bad season. I mean, look at Everton last season, they nearly got relegated. That's a club who's been in the top flight the longer than anyone else. For them to turn around to us, or to me, and go, yeah, you'll be fine, you're an established Premier League club now, I'll be thinking, Wigan was saying that, Fulham was saying that, Norwich used to say that. We're not, because we can't go out and buy £40 million players at the drop of a hat. We might have a couple of players worth 40 million, but we've built them up with the coaching from Eddie, etc., and the rest of the staff. But we're not in a position where we can go out and just buy and buy ourselves longevity in the Premier League. We're going to be in the same situation every year. Yes, and players will be better if they stay with us because they've had more coaching, like your Callum Wilsons, like your Nathan Ackes, like your Aaron Ramsdales, etc., etc. But we're going to have to replace them with other players eventually, and we'll always be in that battle of, first and foremost priority is stay in the Premier League. Then it is, yeah, if we can do that, how high can we get? How can we progress? Year after year, Eddie always wanted to build on better last season, and we did it for the majority of the time until the year we went down. And the year we went down, we were hit with some horrendous injuries. I mean, to have players out for as long as we did, top players, not making excuses, but you see when Liverpool missed Van Dijk or they missed Salah and they're out for periods, they were our versions of a Callum Wilson, Nathan Ackes, they were our versions of your Van Dijk, your Salahs, and they were out for big periods, and we playing players out of position left, right and centre, and you can do that in certain leagues, but in the Premier League it is always tough. And I think when you looked at what we had at our disposal that season, it was a major factor for me of us not having a run together where we were playing the same team, we were chopping and changing, and we very rarely got the same 11 week after week. There was players getting injured left, right and centre. When you're a small club like Bournemouth with not a huge squad, you need your best players fit, or the majority of them week after week, if you're going to have a chance to survive. So we were always up against it. So for us, going forward, the bigger and better we can make the squad, the more chance we have. But I don't think for a long time we'll ever be classed as one of those teams who are an established Premier League team and you're going to be fine, because I think there's only maybe 6, maybe 7 teams in the Premier League who can actually say that, and that is the big 6 and maybe 1 or 2 others. The rest are almost in a similar boat. Yeah. They are, and you can even look at teams like Aston Villa and you would say that they wouldn't say they're 100% guaranteed Premier League football, because if you go through a bad run and that's contagious, all of a sudden you find yourself in a relegation battle. And like I say, Everton are a good example because they're in and among it for a long period last season. So they're a blueprint to turn around and say nobody's an established Premier League team unless you maybe the top 6 or 7 teams year after year. Of course, you get the odd team like Leicester will win it, and West Ham were incredible last year. But
it's rare, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And you'll find majority of the time the top 6, 7 will always be that same accumulation of teams. Like I said, we'll see what the future holds, but for us it'll always be, can we just progress and achieve more than we did the season before? That should be our goal.
And I just want to leave it on this, Steve. If you were to give yourself a FIFA rating when you're at your prime, what would it be?
The thing is, I don't know when my prime was. My prime, I think I was better at 36 when I came back to play for Ed in that Great Escape season than what I was when I was captain at... No, I'd have to say when I was captain at 28 would be... Because you look at yourself physically. I just wish I'd played every game like I did when I was 36, or the mentality of every game. So I would have to say when I was 28. What categories have we gone? You give me the category.
The metric that it is today, so Messi's obviously the top, whatever he is now.
95.
95.
What is that? That's an overall.
Overall, yeah overall.
That's all like pace, aggression, strength.
Do overall, then do the subcategories after.
Yeah, but remember, lads, I played League One, so you won't even get a League One player over about 60, would you, really?
Come on.
Potential, I should have been around about a 70, but I'll probably put myself around about a 60. Potential, and looking back, and if I could change a lot of what I did, I'd probably put myself 70, 75, because I had a lot of attributes, but I just didn't, for whatever reason, they didn't materialise. But at my prime, probably around about, if Messi's a 95?
Yeah, 95,
65. Messi. I don't know, I don't really play FIFA, so I wouldn't know what 65 is good or bad. Is it shit, or is it all right?
It's all right. It's all right. Yeah, it's all right. I would have said you were higher. Definitely. Okay. Yeah.
Maybe 70 then. Yeah, 70.
And who do you think the best player is that you've played with throughout your career?
Well, Jermaine, yeah.
Jermaine Defoe.
Yeah, if I played with. Yeah.
Who's your favourite?
We had Rio Ferdinand here on loan, but he was a young lad and he wasn't in his prime. You know, he'd come here on loan and then he went back to West Ham and he was still incredible. He was streets above everyone. But I played with Rio Ferdinand for just a couple of months down here on loan. I think it might have been just a month. But with Jermaine, I played with him for the best part of a season. I'd have to say Jermaine, because he could just do so much that nobody else could in training and in games.
For sure. And I guess we'll leave it on that.
I thought we were going to go subcategories.
Oh, well, yeah, bang the subcategories. Go on then. 100%. So we've got strength.
95.
95. That's hefty. We've got pace.
50.
50. Heading.
Is 50 rubbish?
Yeah, 50 is low. Yeah, 50 is low.
Yeah, 50. Heading. 95.
95.
Yeah, it was brilliant.
Hefty.
There's not many people could beat me in the air.
Dribbling.
Yeah. 40.
That's low.
40. Yeah, I was shite. Couldn't dribble with the ball.
Stamina.
I got through games. No, I was all right, because you got to remember when I was going up and down the pitch, I was going back in defence, helping out. I was back up front, then I was back in defence. Every corner, every free kick, when teams in League One would just put the ball in the box, I had to go back and defend. So my stamina was quite good. I'd give myself, 70 stamina.
Nice. We'll leave it on that.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all we've got.
That's all we got.
So
Subcategories.
30, 40, 70 and 2 95s.
95s are decent though.
So the average is around about 70, like I said. Yeah.
Probably. But mate, obviously just want to say thank you so much for today. Unbelievable story. Yeah. Super inspirational. And yeah, just an unreal conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much, Steve.
My pleasure.
Cheers.
Thank you for having me.
Cheers, mate.